across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back. It is the home of Common Sense. Thank you to Julia. Thank you to Peter Cardwell, who was in the seat yesterday because I was off. But back today with an absolutely rammed programme, rammed to the proverbial gills this afternoon. Chancellor Rachel Reeves' emotional PMQ's appearance, as you've been hearing, shook the markets with the pound falling and borrowing costs rising. That's what a tier or two can do. Criticism has mounted over her tenure, but Keir Starmer defended her amid growing pressure. We'll have more on that in a few moments' time. Is this the beginning of the end for Labour? Also this afternoon, councils are offering landlords rent, deposits and refurbishments to, you guessed it, house asylum seekers, apparently saving 5.5 million quid a day on hotels. While landlords gain, British renters face a tighter market. This is nonsense. It can't go on. It's a disaster. The Home Office defended the scheme as cutting costs and that it's legally required. And the BBC has said it will no longer broadcast performances deemed high risk. Well, that's Chris Martin out the window, isn't it? This is after, of course, the controversial punk rap duo Bob Vylan and their salty mouths over there at Glastonbury at the weekend. We'll have more on that and everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. What a day. And as we are now all too aware, there was a major water leak over there at Westminster yesterday, coming straight out of Rachel Reeves' face. And now at first, I think like lots of people, I had a bit of sympathy. Maybe her dog had died, possibly some bad news from a distant relative, or perhaps she got over-emotional after she watched the first episode of the new season of Young Sheldon. I don't know what was going on. It could have been anything. What could be the cause of this facial tsunami? Everyone was keeping stum, spelled S-C-H-T-U-M. Starmer knows nothing. Rayner knows nothing. Lindsay Hoyle, I know nothing. Nobody knew anything. And with that, after PMQ's boomerang Rach was gone, never to be seen again. Or so we thought. Because today, over there in East London, she turns up like some kind of devastating shapeshifter. She was all smiles. This woman could not have grinned more if you were playing tug of war with her cheeks. It was absolutely extraordinary. Not only that, there was a big hug for her boss, Keir Starmer, a man who 24 hours ago had hung her out to dry. He hugged her, not a kind of like natural sort of hug, embrace thing. It was more the kind of hug that might happen if you bump into an ex at a funeral. That kind of hug. Nothing to see here, they all said. Business as usual. And today she went on to explain she was just having a bit of a tough old day. It's a terrible look when your Chancellor, the second most senior person in government, bawls their eyes out for all to see amidst PMQs. 0344 499 1000. This is Cobblers, of course. The beginning of the end? I don't think that overstretches it, to be honest. Starmer has had the worst start in office of any Prime Minister in history. And Mike Graham wrote a piece today in The Sun that delves into some of the figures around what's been happening. His approval rating is minus 54. At this stage of Tony Blair being in office, his approval rating was plus 34. What the hell is going on? Is this the beginning of the end? Tomorrow, of course, meant to be his anniversary. This is meant to be where you'd be looking at Downing Street now and trays load of vol-au-vents and egg sarnies and all manner of tasty delights will be getting wheeled in, ready for the big 1 year in office celebrations. They'd all be there waiting in their new suits and looking prim and proper in the sunshine as they got into the Downing Street garden and had a little bit of Pims and a few nibbles along the way, congratulating the mighty leader on the amazing efforts of his first 12 months. A seamless piece of work from the left winger. Wasn't it great, they would all say, as they clunked their glasses together in a big collective cheers, Sir Keir. But there will be none of that, because it's been, frankly, a horror show. 0344 499 1000. Is this the beginning of the end for Labour? I mean, tomorrow we will look back at that year. But today I'm sensing, and particularly when I saw them at the, announcing the health stuff in East London a little earlier, what should have looked like an amazing kind of, launch of something it just looked like the most awkward thing ever. Angela Rayner with the knives out. There's clearly something going on. There is an underbelly, a malaise snaking its way around the front bench of the Labour Party. The beginning of the end? How are you sensing it after watching all of that, and how it panned out later today? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word on this and the other big stories of the day. Candice Holdsworth, the writer and broadcaster, is back with us. Candice, good afternoon to you.
Noon.
What a day it was. Rachel Reeves breaking down in tears, and of course it meant that the markets were sent into some kind of turmoil as a result of this. It wasn't a good look. The pound fell, borrowing costs rose amid doubts over Labour's fiscal credibility. Rachel Reeves, though, has said just a few moments ago that actually there was really nothing to see here. Have a listen.
Well, clearly I was upset yesterday, and everyone could see that. It was a personal issue, and I'm not going to go into the details of that. But my job as Chancellor at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday is to be at PMQs next to the Prime Minister, supporting the government, and that's what I try to do. I guess the thing that maybe is a bit different between my job and many of your viewers is that when I'm having a tough day, it's on the telly, and most people don't have to deal with that.
No, indeed. Most people don't have to deal with that, she said. Good enough excuse, Candice? What do you think?
I'm sceptical.
Come on. It's all right. We'll pass you the tissues. Don't worry. They're on their way.
So I remember when I first started out in journalism, and I wrote an article that caused a bit of controversy, and it was like a Twitter mob gathered and they had their pitchforks, and I was like, what do I do? And I went to an older journalist and I said to him, this is pretty upsetting. What do I do? And he said to me, listen, if you're going to be in this game, you've got to have a thick skin. And he used to be in politics, and he said, but if you can't handle it and you don't have the skin of a rhino, he said, never, ever, ever go into politics, because that is the most brutal game of all. This is just how it is. You've got to be tough. You've got to be tough. And as much as I might feel sorry for a person on an individual level, on a human level, she's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And I mean, she's doing things that other people, she is causing harm and suffering to other people. I know people who have lost their jobs because of that employers' national insurance rise. Think of all the people who aren't going to be hired. I mean, she's made decisions which have made people very, very, very critical of her. So, I mean, I'm not going, I'm not going to extend lots of, over-egg sympathy to someone who has a lot of power in this country.
What's your kind of assessment of it all? Because everybody had different theories about it. Firstly, when someone said, she had some bad news, maybe, and then I thought, OK, and then I thought, well, hang on a second. Why would you go into the chamber if you'd had news that was that devastating? You wouldn't have. I mean, the distance between the Speaker's chair and where you sit, and behind the Speaker's chair is literally the exit to the chamber at that end. So it's 15 feet away. She didn't need to go in. And I thought, no, it's not that. And I think it was the whole realisation that Keir Starmer doesn't have her back.
No, I just think the whole thing is starting to come apart at the seams. I mean, for me as well, when Keir Starmer rode back so quickly on that Island of Strangers speech, I mean, that was meant to be a seminal sort of career-defining moment speech about immigration, and he got a bit of pushback from other Labour MPs and immediately backed off because, I mean, he's terrified. This is not, to me, this is not a Chancellor and a Prime Minister who are leading their party, who are governing, who know what they're doing. And the Labour MPs that I speak to, or the Labour advisors or the Labour people, they don't like them. I mean, they don't think that they have a sort of driving philosophy, a driving purpose. And I think if you have that, it makes you more resilient, and you can handle the criticism and you can handle the jeers and you can handle the pushback because you know what you're trying to achieve in politics. And it's not clear what Starmer and Rachel Reeves are trying to achieve. Like, they're very managerial, they're very technocratic. Maybe if you were being generous, you could say it's the times in which they're governing. I mean, there's just like problems here, problems there. You know, they're constantly putting out little fires. So does it leave room for someone who has that sort of like driving political purpose? I don't know. You know, maybe any leader from another political party would struggle in the time that we're in.
Yeah.
But I think people looking at this now, this project, are thinking, what is going on? How much longer can this go on for? Is it just going to, you know, just shambolically stumble on until the next election?
Yes, is the right answer to that. If the next election is in 2020, I mean, it might be before then. We might find ourselves in a strange situation. You look at Keir Starmer, I mentioned at the beginning that, you know, his poll rating is minus 54. At this point in Tony Blair's tenure, it was plus 34. And that would be kind of usually a year in. People are sort of still giving you the benefit of the doubt. You're putting some meat on the bones of those new policies. Even if you didn't vote for them, you can see their direction of travel. We've had none of that. It's been massive, and these aren't small U-turns. It's been absolutely huge. And then we had a welfare bill that set out to save 5 billion quid and is now going to cost money. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The ineptitude levels are so heady. It's beyond precedence. It's breathtaking to watch.
It is. I mean, look, there were some people, some very far-sighted people who predicted this. So they said if Labour get a large majority like the one that they've got, what you could see, because there's not necessarily a strong opposition, in many ways, the Conservatives are quite demoralised and they don't know what they're doing. You know, reform's an existential threat to them. You will see opposition coming from within Labour itself. So, you know, you'll get factions, you'll get groups of MPs that will sort of push the leadership around. And, you know, looking back now, that was actually a very good prediction, because I think Labour, much like the Conservatives, is actually quite a split party. I don't think it knows who it is or who it's meant to serve. I think it's between the sort of maybe more middle class graduates, socially liberal people, and then it's got its old working class base. And then, and of course, immigration's the massive issue on this. So, I mean, the working class base, I mean, they're much stricter on immigration. They want to limit it. They want, you know, the governments in this country to focus on people who are poor in this country. Whereas, you know, the other side of that, you know, the more middle class socially liberal set, I mean, they're more relaxed about it. And in fact, you know, when Keir Starmer gave his Island of Strangers speech, I mean, they were horrified by it. They thought it was shades of Enoch Powell. So how do you reconcile those two factions? I mean, Blue Labour's there, you know, Maurice Glassman, all these sorts of guys, you know, would say, you know, that's the direction we need to move in. But is the current leadership of Labour able to do that? Is that where their hearts are? I mean, it's not clear. It's not clear to me where they want to go. And I think that they're going to really, really, really struggle to reconcile those two sides. Not to mention, they've got all the Gaza issue, which is threatening Labour's vote in so many places. I mean, like, they've got their, you know, so-called superstars like Wes Streeting. I mean, didn't he win by like a tiny number of votes?
Yeah. It was very, very close.
Yeah, he could lose that seat in the next election. I mean, Angela Rayner, she's got a thicker majority, but she also has to, you know, sort of compromise.
Sure.
So things are not going well for them. They're experiencing malaise.
Let's move to this story then. 9 Labour MPs voting against the banning of the group Palestine Action. This, of course, is the government decided they wanted to label them as a terrorist organisation. MPs overwhelmingly backed the decision to add the Direct Action Group to a list of terrorist groups that puts them alongside the likes of Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Islamic State. One of the MPs who voted against this new tag was Zara Sultana, who wasn't having any of it. Here she is speaking in the House of Commons yesterday.
I stand with the millions of people that oppose genocide, because I am one of them. I oppose the blood-soaked hands of this government trying to silence us. So I say this loudly and proudly. On Wednesday, the 2nd of July, 2025, we are all Palestine. Order!
No, we're not.
So there it is. Very, very much against it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think with Palestine Action, you know, there is a line. There is a line when things cross from legitimate political expression, free speech, protest, into something else. And, you know, what they've allegedly been accused of doing, I think, crosses the line, and it goes into physical violence, physical action, possibly even sabotage. We know the Home Office is investigating their funding sources. I mean, nothing has been established yet. They're just allegations. They're worried that they could have possible links to Iran. I say this, it's all allegedly. We don't know. Yeah. So I think that we shouldn't be naive about this. You know, whereas I'm always someone who would defend free speech, and, you know, I think I'm very staunch and I have a good track record on this. I think this is the right action to prescribe them.
Yeah, 100%. And of course, you know, it's a democracy. MPs are entitled to vote in different ways, but it is a little bit extraordinary. We have the entire House voting one way and 9 sort of lone voices going the other. You do scratch your head a bit. Stay with us, Candice. Lots more still to come. Loads of big stories. We're asking that question as well, based on what we've seen. I think the last 24 hours are not just about an MP crying on the green benches. It says so much more than that. So much more than that. There is something going on. There is a whirlwind brewing. And when is it going to manifest? Is this the beginning of the end of Labour? 0344 499 1000.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel. Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall.
It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Candice Holdsworth is with us. We're looking at the big stories of the day. I mean, there is the big story of the day. What the hell's happening to our government? But there are other ones out there, including this, Candice. More than 1,000 grooming gang suspects investigated by Britain's largest police force in 59 separate abuse probes. You have to really read it again sometimes, don't you? And you think this is just one police force. 1,000 grooming gang suspects. This is the same grooming gang story that the government, up till half an hour ago, said, nothing really to see here, it's all been dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the word industrial scale comes to mind. I mean, the true extent of this, I don't think we quite know. I mean, the the victims of this, the girls, some of whom are now, women, they have children themselves, say that this is still going on. They know that this is still happening. In fact, they feel that they haven't got proper justice. I mean, they know that many of the people who were complicit in it and the people who perpetrated it are still walking the streets. Of course, there are the men who do this, but there were also the people who were supposed to look after these young girls. There were the people who were working in the foster homes. There were the local council leaders. There were the teachers at their schools. And in fact, many say it was failures by the police as well. I mean, there's not just, this whole thing, it's almost systemic. In these areas where it happened, there were failures in so many different areas. And you can't quite believe it. It's almost surreal how bad it was. I mean, I'm just glad that we're at a point now where we can talk about it openly, but it just feels like it was allowed, this cancer was allowed to grow and metastasize to such a level, to such a degree, to such a size, maybe that's a better word, so I'm trying to find the right word, that it's caused enormous damage. I think it's caused enormous damage in the authorities in this country. I mean, huge political discord, not to mention, tearing those communities apart. I mean, this was just, this destroyed people's trust.
And interesting, Greater Manchester Police said they've made significant improvements on how it investigates group-based sexual exploitation of children. You wouldn't think it would need that statement, would you? I mean, bearing in mind, this goes over 20, 30 years, for goodness sake. Yes. And we suddenly hear today we've made some improvements in this. If you've got a potential of 1,000 suspects, then I would suggest you had a pretty solid case somewhere on you. Even if half of them had done nothing wrong, that still leaves 500 people, and they're just the ones you know about.
But at least now they sort of do talk about it in terms of abuse. I mean, it used to be that these young girls were called child prostitutes. As if such a thing existed, as if these children were, making conscious choices and that they were working girls or something like that. I mean, it's also, the complete contempt with which they were viewed. I mean, they were just not seen for what they were until there were people like Maggie Oliver who came along and said, wake up, these are children who are being victimized and raped and exploited. And it took a whole, people had to actually reframe how they saw these working class girls, because I mean, that is a huge factor in all of this. Girls were working class. They were incredibly vulnerable. Many of them came from very troubled backgrounds. There was no one really looking after them. And the people who were paid, whose jobs it was to look out for them and look out for them, just treated them with contempt. Treated total and utter contempt.
And this story, BBC refuses to broadcast high-risk live event after that Glastonbury backlash. They said they're going to take a look at these high-risk performers, but we do know that they already had notice that the Bob villain outfit could be problematic. So they knew this already and still went ahead with it. Now they're saying they won't broadcast high-risk live events in the future. Is that good enough?
I don't know, this just sounds like an HR managerial response. I mean, it's just so inadequate. What does that even mean, high risk? I mean, there's so much that they could have done in that moment. I mean, people who've worked in production have said it would have been very, very, very easy to just cut to something else. I mean, they had like 400 reporters there or something in various stages, loads of presenters. It would have been so easy to just cut to someone else, but they did not. There's obviously a much deeper failure there. I mean, I'm not saying I know exactly what happened, but as so many people have said, did they not know in the moment that this was something that was not acceptable? That shouldn't have been broadcast. Although, I will say one thing in terms of free speech. I am glad that people got to see that, because then people got to see the truth, and they got to see exactly what this guy was about, exactly what the Glastonbury crowd was about, and just how much the BBC has allowed this stuff to sort of grow and fester, and maybe how they view it. So it was a good thing it went out.
Yeah, no, there is actually, you're right, something to be said about the fact that it sort of exposed an area that we'd sort of suspected for a long time, and it certainly threw up the unsavoury nature of some elements of this debate. And, as somebody said to us on Monday on the programme, any outfit or organisation or person that starts off with the chant "Death to" shouldn't be anywhere near a national TV screen.
Absolutely not. I mean, I can imagine, being on stage in front of hundreds, maybe 1,000 people who are cheering your name. I mean, I'm sure adrenaline was going and he felt really powerful and he got really into it. Although there's footage of him saying this, a similar thing, at another venue. So this is something he said before. It's something he said a number of times. Yeah, I think this is just normal, though, in these circles. I mean, I don't think they even think about it.
No, and I think that was probably one of the problems, that the people who were in charge, who might have been able to do something, probably thought, well, you know, it's free speech. Well, you're literally calling for the death of Jewish people here in the most sensitive of settings. A war between Israel and Hamas, and at a music festival. I know that doesn't need to be said again, the irony that it was at a music festival. We'll watch with interest as to whether the BBC keeps to their word and whether they will be a little bit more vigilant in the future. I want to bring this story in as a final one as well, Candice. Half of London cyclists treat the red light at a traffic light, as optional. Particularly during busy rush hour periods. Cyclists' disregard for traffic signals is criticised as dangerous, posing risk to pedestrians and other road users. I still can't believe it gets a free pass. And I know, look, I get all the arguments, you know, very few people die because of a cyclist jumping a red light, but a car could be fatal. I know that doesn't make it all right. That's not a reason to say, well, therefore it's OK. I mean, it's a flipping epidemic. You haven't got to stand at many red lights in a not just the capital city, but other cities. I mean, cyclists just go through it. Yeah. I don't understand it. How can they not know?
Yeah, they take a chance. They really do. It's like when I first moved to London, I learned that when I cross the road and it goes red, wait, because there'll probably be a cyclist who'll just come speeding past. So you've got to be so careful. They don't care. Also, the other thing as well, my big bugbear is when you see grown men cycling on the pavement. I mean, they just take over the pavement and you actually have to say to them, get off the road. I mean, when I was 10, 11 years old and I was cycling to school, I was taught to cycle on the road and to give proper hand signals. But these guys have just forgotten it all and they don't care about pedestrians. They really don't.
Absolutely. We have actually got time just to throw this one in as well, under the heading Go Woke, Go Broke. This is Jaguar. Sales have crashed 97.5% since that rebrand that they had, a controversial rebrand replacing the iconic Growler Jaguar logo with a geometric J sign, which fans criticise as resembling a handbag clasp. Let's hear from Nigel Farage talking about this, predicting the brand's decline when the rebrand was first revealed. Here he is.
Do you remember what I told you, that Jaguar had gone absolutely bonkers with their new advert showing a bunch of weirdos and no cars? I predict Jaguar will now go bust, and do you know what? They deserve to. Well, the bosses of Jaguar were very upset with me, but I did warn them. Their sales figures are out and they've fallen by more than 25% in the last quarter. Just goes to show, folks, go woke, go broke. So please, any of you hanging on to political correctness, get rid of it, or you'll live the rest of your life poor.
We did at the time, Caddy, speak to some sort of motoring experts that actually thought it was a stroke of genius of Jaguar, that they didn't really have a choice. It was a brand that was associated really with sort of old blokes over 60, and it had never rediscovered the kind of sexiness that it once had. The audience it had at the beginning, or the customer base it had at the beginning, has kind of followed it through its field of success. But then they've died off and new people haven't joined in. So they needed to do something, which is why they kind of released, do you remember there was a weird ad and it was full of rainbows and odd models and wacky hairstyles. And I'm thinking, is this the new Jean-Paul Gaultier perfume that's come out? No, it's a flipping Jaguar. It's a car.
Exactly. Honestly, it was like it was directed by one of Sacha Baron Cohen's satirical characters. I mean, It was like Bruno did Cars. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, who do they think their target audience are? I mean, it's not going to be, you know, young, hip wokies on TikTok and Instagram. It's going to be those middle-aged men. Sorry, that's it. Like, that's who your audience is. I mean, that's who your customers are. True. And they are not going to be seen dead driving that car. Not.
In a million years. So let's go. Good luck to their next rebrand. But this one just looked like a bad dream of some sort.
It was amazing.
You're seeing it there on your screens as well. Listen, Candice, thank you as ever. Candice Holdsworth, the writer and broadcaster. Lots to get through at this end. Everything you need to know, and of course all the breaking news. 0344 499 1000. Is Rachel Reeves responsible for Labour's the final nail in the coffin? Less than a year by 1 day since Keir Starmer took power. Is there something else going on? So there's a lot of dots need joining up here. There's a bad smell. Something is afoot. I think we can safely say the Chancellor won't be there for the duration of this Parliament. Might not even be there by the end of this month, by the looks of things. We'll talk to the economics editor at The Sun, Ryan Saby, in just a couple of moments' time. Our lines are open. Is it the beginning of the end for Labour? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Lee says, I think Rachel Reeves will be gone before someone gets the current voice of doom. Yeah, that's a good point, which is what, day 15, Sam, or something? To 14. Day 14, it's back at about 2:45. We're sort of hopeful. Margaret in Birmingham says, tears yesterday, now hugs and smiles. What an Oscar performance, all fake. No way that was a personal issue. What a load of BS. Get the violins out. We ain't buying it. No, and you know, once in a while a politician will get a little tearful. Theresa May got tearful on the very last day in office. I think you can give that a green light, that's fine. Mrs Thatcher, of course, one of the most iconic photographs of her leaving Downing Street. She peered out of the window of her official car. Just caught the watery eyes of the Iron Lady. Those moments, that was very... Yesterday was somebody bawling their eyes out on the green benches. What caused Rachel Reeves's tears? The Chancellor's future is in balance amid bust-up claims. Of course, that tearful PMQ's appearance did trigger more than just a row in the party. It triggered market instability with the pound dropping, rising borrowing costs. We've had all sorts of things. Labour's welfare U-turns, increasing deficits by £5 billion, fueled by criticism of Reeves's tenure, speculation about her future. My goodness, the list goes on. Despite opposition scepticism, Keir Starmer defended Rachel Reeves, affirming her role amid political and economic challenges. They had a big old hug today. Well, it was a sort of a hug. It was kind of like, I don't really like you, but let's just do this hug. So they did that, and smiles all round. Clearly she'd had a bit of a makeover. Nothing to see here, Governor. Really? Let's chat with Ryan Saby, Deputy Political Editor and Economics Editor over there at The Sun. Ryan, good afternoon to you. What a day it was.
Quite incredible, Ian. I was sat there in the House of Commons in the press gallery, and we actually looked down on where the MPs are. And from my angle, I could just see Rachel Reeves just wiping away tears from her face. I had colleagues who were messaging me from the other side of the chamber who were looking full on and seeing Rachel Reeves just shed those tears in full public glare. Yeah. And there was just ongoing speculation about what was causing this, because you don't sit there unless something is really wrong, and start crying. So it was difficult to watch, actually, because we just didn't know at that stage.
Was it one of those moments in the press gallery where you're kind of looking at each other going, is she crying? And then it suddenly realised, realisation dawns that actually it wasn't like a little tear. I mean, this was she was properly crying, right? I mean, something was clearly badly wrong.
Yeah, no, in the official sort of initial stages, there was sort of the odd tear, and you thought, well, perhaps she's going to brave this out. But then a colleague of mine then messaged me to say, no, this is happening all the time. And there was some video footage as well of the sort of bottom lip quivering as well, which was difficult to watch. And I think it was difficult for those around her. Sir Keir Starmer has been out this morning talking about it, and says Prime Minister's questions is totally wired, and he's just focusing on the questions and the onslaught of questions from other MPs. Maybe he didn't get time or a moment to even look at her. But I did notice at one stage that some chewing gum was passed to the Chancellor from an MP sat behind her. So people were aware, and people, it didn't take much for Kemi Badenoch, who was sat opposite, saying that she looks, that Rachel Reeves look miserable. Now, at that stage, I don't think she really knew, and sort of the streaming of tears did come after that more forcefully. So it was difficult, and she tried to get in there.
Was there to support the Prime Minister. So I feel like for the Chancellor, it really was that sense of duty that she had to be there. And she obviously, didn't realise what it was looking like on the television screens, because it was uncomfortable watching.
Very, yeah. And I didn't know chewing gum was a known sort of antidote to crying your eyes out. Passing the Chancellor a hubba blubber, maybe, I don't know, but whatever it was. I think Ryan might have lost us at that moment. I think his line might have... We'll try and get Ryan back on. Something went wrong technically there, because I also want to get into with Ryan, because he was there in the press gallery when this was happening. And by the way, we're not analysing somebody crying in the conventional sense. We're analysing what's underneath it. What could have gone so wrong in government when the second most powerful politician in the land, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, is publicly crying while sitting behind the Prime Minister at the iconic Prime Minister's question time? Something bad has happened, and I'm interested to learn from Ryan, and we'll try and get his line reconnected. Where was Angela Rayner in all of this, and what was the deal with the Deputy Prime Minister? Because if you watch the whole thing, not just those isolated shots of the moment when Starmer's talking and Rachel Reeves is crying behind him, but if you widen that out and look at Angela Rayner, I mean, the daggers that are coming from her. Now, I don't know whether she's aiming those at Starmer, whether she's aiming those at a scenario that had recently unfolded. Apparently, there'd been a bit of a row between Rachel Reeves and Angela Rayner on all sorts of things. We've got Ryan back with us. We lost you fleetingly there, Ryan, but we're glad you're back. I was just expanding there on the sort of Crygate over there on the green benches yesterday, on the front bench. Tell us about Angela Rayner in all of this, because if you widen the camera angle, Rachel Reeves isn't the only face to be looking at, because Angela Rayner's was speaking volumes, it seemed, yesterday.
Yeah, no, she spoke earlier in the day, and she seemed to rule out her position, and to be Prime Minister, says she doesn't want the job, doesn't want to sort of go up the ladder of in Parliament. But one thing that was very, very clear, that I can't speak for her, but it seemed that if someone is crying like that, phones are going off and people are looking around. It did seem rather odd that maybe there wasn't any sign of sympathy or a touch on the arm, or even passing over a tissue just to just to make sure that she was all right. But these things are very public, and the Labour Party and the government would have been clearly thinking about, would it have looked more odd if they'd intervened, or would it, or not? So I think there were many things probably going through the minds. And I think when you're on that front bench, you're not looking at your phone as much as you are, because the cameras are on you. Yes. So there would have been that focus on looking forward from Angela Rayner, but there was speculation of some sort of disagreement between the two of them. That's been heavily denied by certainly Angela Rayner's team. So I don't think we should look too closely at that. But it is interesting that Angela Rayner's name was dragged into this yesterday.
Well, let's have a listen now to the official, this is the official unveiling of the real reason, or what was actually going on, from the woman herself. Here's the Chancellor of the Exchequer speaking just an hour ago.
Well, clearly I was upset yesterday, and everyone could see that. It was a personal issue, and I'm not going to go into the details of that. But my job as Chancellor at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday is to be at PMQs next to the Prime Minister, supporting the government, and that's what I try to do. I guess the thing that maybe is a bit different between my job and many of your viewers is that when I'm having a tough day, it's on the telly, and most people don't have to deal with that.
This is not an ordinary moment when you would try to critique someone's looks, but I have to say, Ryan, has Liberace's makeup artist been in on there or something? What's been going on? Yesterday, she looked absolutely wrenched. She looked exhausted. The last place she wanted to be was anywhere public. Today she's pitched up, couldn't smile more if she tried, and looking not just quite well, but slightly like a different person.
Yeah, you just wonder sometimes if that's what a good night's sleep does to you.
Maybe it's just that.
Yeah, I think yesterday, I don't know what this personal issue was, but clearly everything got a little bit, a little bit too much. It was all on in public. She had, a bit of an altercation with the speaker, and you just don't know whether all these things just triggered, just came together. And also, don't forget as well, on Monday and Tuesday, she had to find £5 billion after that welfare U-turn. So anyone gets asked to find £5 billion, and it's going to come down on you, and you've got to think pretty quickly. But she did tell the speaker, we're led to believe that she actually said, "I'm under so much pressure." When politicians say that, it just shows you how much pressure she's on. Politicians are very careful with their words. If she's saying that publicly, it really does bring home exactly the kind of pressure that she's under.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, what's the word on the street as to whether she can survive this long term? I mean, certainly she's not going anywhere in the next few days, but I mean, is there a sense that, Keir Starmer approval ratings are really not very good? It could hardly have been a worse year for a Prime Minister, and he's only been there 1 year, shy a day. What's the sense at Westminster? A reshuffle with a new Chancellor? I hear Wes Streeting's name keeps getting mentioned.
Yeah, Wes Streeting's name will always get mentioned, of a sort of very able cabinet minister, and he's clearly on the way up. But I think what today really showed, we had Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves next to each other. Politically, that was a signal to Westminster to say, look, she's not going anywhere. She's stuck by my side as the Shadow Chancellor. She's now by my side as the Chancellor. Westminster, calm down. And I think the other thing to really look towards yesterday was the money markets and how the city reacted. The city and those traders are actually, they really, really like Rachel Reeves, those fiscal rules, those strict fiscal rules of her grip on the economy. The reason the markets reacted the way they did, with the pound falling and the bond markets acting in the way that they did, was because they fear that any successor to Rachel Reeves may not be as strict with those borrowing rules and those tax and spend rules as she is. So I think they like the sound of Rachel Reeves being Chancellor. And the fact that they rallied this morning once you had the sort of the backing of Sir Keir Starmer, it just shows you that they want Rachel Reeves to stay in place because they like the cut of her jib and how she's handling the economy. And it looks like she's sticking closely to those rules.
Yeah, and that's the deal, isn't it? Does she stick close to those rules? And I would imagine that's where some of the pressure is coming, because people in some markets might like it, but there's politicians around her, of course, that don't. And maybe that's why.
I think the interesting thing is that she actually said today that there is a cost to pay for that, for the welfare U-turn. Now, reading between the lines, does that mean the cost to pay is more spending cuts across Whitehall? Does that mean more tax rises in the autumn? Not for those individuals and on income tax or national insurance, but could it mean wider tax hikes for business? So I think that's one of the sort of things that she's going to sort of have to contend with when she's sort of drawing up those budget balance sheets in the coming months.
Indeed. Listen, that was great. Ryan, lovely to speak. Keep us informed as to what's happening, because I'm sure this story has not come to any kind of conclusion yet, even though Starmer and Number 10 and everyone, and Rachel Reeves, are putting a nice shiny gloss on all of this. Yeah, everything's fine. It was just a bad day at the office. And that was more than a bad day at the office. And the telling line is when Rachel Reeves is saying to colleagues, I'm under so much pressure. Look, you're in a job. If you speak to anybody who's ever done that job, or any of those top sort of 3 or 4 job, Prime Minister, Chancellor, Home Secretary, Foreign Secretary, you are always under pressure. I mean, the pressure is immense by definition. It's not just what you've got to keep doing, the juggling of 1,000 things, doing a PhD in 7 different disciplines in 24-hour periods, being told information that might be a bit uncomfortable to know, but you can't tell anyone else about it, that kind of stuff. The job, the gig, pressure comes with it. And it's, so when you announce that you're under pressure, what the heck is going on? One can only guess at this stage, but can she survive it? But I think the question, is this the beginning of the end for Labour, is a reasonable one right now. Your thoughts, 0344 499 1000.
They promised stability.
They said the grown-ups are back in charge.
I was so happy you just couldn't believe it.
Our work is urgent, and we begin it today.
I mean, you couldn't really scrape together a worse gang of misfits to run a dog kennel. Broken promises.
Billions blown.
Botched U-turns.
And Britain
is burning.
One of the most immeasurably eventful.
1 year in power.
And Britain in freefall.
It's just been a disaster.
1 year of chaos.
Friday, 4th of July.
9 p.m.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Paul in Belfast says, how come the people behind Rachel Reeves knew she was upset but no one did anything on the front bench? Raina was smirking. Apparently somebody handed her some chewing gum. And I can only think a few people have been speculating on the use of chewing gum when you're really upset. I suppose there is a psychology that if your mouth is doing something else, then your brain ceases to... Is it that? I don't know. Do you dish out the Bazooka Joes during a time of mourning? I'm not sure. This from Turg, who says, just a thought, could the Prime Minister call an early election? He is so full of himself and risks losing the Prime Minister position to Red Rainer. He may feel he can win because Reform would not have enough time to get enough candidates to challenge. Yeah, well, he might say. It's a good point. He was in this building a few hours ago on Chris Evans' show. And, you know, he looks completely in control. OK, I don't know that. He looks... For those that were around when he was in the building, he looks very calm, doesn't look flustered about anything. But then he's a lawyer, you know, he can do poker face like a few others in that respect. But he's got a massive majority. Might have a thin end of a wedge of a vote share, but still a big majority. Let's go to Mark, who's in Manchester. What's going on, Mark? Help us out here. Afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian. Yeah, well, my take on it is that when you see the Chancellor of the Exchequer actually crying, maybe it's time for all of us who care about the financial health of our great country, we should be crying. Because maybe she's the one who's actually realised that HMS GB's hole below the waterline is actually sinking pretty quickly.
Yep.
You know, maybe we should all be crying. And my other point really is, with 160 majority and they can't get basic cost saving measures through. I mean, even under Boris Johnson, he couldn't right the financial issues, even with his large majority. I mean, my point is, you know, this democracy that we live in, is it capable of delivering the necessary medicine for us to get on the right financial path? Because it doesn't seem to me that it is. Because if it's so painful, the solution, that the majority will never vote for it, then it's just a gradual decline and debacle that we're just stuck with.
I mean, some people are writing it off going, look, it was a really unfortunate time. This stuff just happens from time to time. Don't overanalyse it. You know, if you hear clippity-clop outside the window, it's a horse, not a zebra. Don't overthink it. So it's just somebody who cried, had a bad day. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm being a bit facetious saying if you see the Chancellor of the Exchequer crying, it's time for us all to cry. But I mean, you know, we have been in a financial decline for probably 55 years, and maybe she's the first one who realises, it's never going to get any better. Yeah. It's time to cry. I mean, you know, I'm being a bit facetious, but it still reflects badly when you have really Keir Starmer's turned into an administrator for me. He's not a leader. You know, he's caved in. That's not what leaders with visions do. You know, they've turned around to us and say they've inherited this mess. This is the solution. Oh, sorry. Although we've got 160 majority, we can't get the solution that we told you is the solution through. It just makes me think that this democracy that we live in is never, ever going to be capable of delivering probably what we need to right this ship. And it's very, very depressing to do that.
And we do need to right this ship. Good work. Listen, thank you for that, Mark in Manchester. Let's go to Simon in Derby on the same point. What are your thoughts, Simon? Afternoon to you.
Hi, Ian. Yeah, I just think it's sometimes you've just got to bite the bullet and stiff up a lip and all that. You know, you've really got to get on with it. I mean, there's times in my life where, and probably in yours as well, where you've dreaded having to go into a meeting, think I'm going to get absolutely mullered in here. And I mean, I've been to the stage where I've gone to go to the toilet first before I went in, because I knew it was going to be a difficult time. I've physically thrown up, but I thought, right, that's it, get on with it.
Yeah.
But you and I and the rest of the country demand the best people to do a very important job. And clearly, unfortunately, this lady's not quite got what it takes. I wish she had, and I wish her well in whatever she does, but she needs to just admit to the fact that you know, some things are, sometimes we bite off a bit more than we can chew, and she's, for whatever, she's perhaps doing it for the sake of the party, I don't know, but it ain't for the sake of the country, and it needs to be. It's really important that we have the right folk doing important jobs, and this is the second most important job in the country, for God's sake.
Yeah, I mean, this is not, you know, this is not the Department of Culture. I'm sure, I know there's some important elements to that as well, but you take my point.
I mean, I'd have given her a bit of a metaphorical cuddle and say, I'm sorry, you're a bit upset. Oh, by the way, you still got to go.
Yeah. Yes, spot on. Listen, great point. Thank you, Simon, for that. And there is a sense, a real sense, I think, that she's just out of her depth. It's kind of as simple as that. It's not always about... I was speaking to one Labour backbencher a few years ago and said to him, why did you never end up on the front bench? And he said, because I'm not intelligent enough. And I said, but you're super bright. He said, no, it's not that kind of intelligence. It's a sort of it's a special sort of hypothecated intelligence all of its own. Doesn't work like, you know, you get kind of academic intelligence and you get streetwise intelligence, you get emotional intelligence. So this is another tentacle of the intelligence spectrum that just requires something, you know, just that sort of little extra something. You've got to have it, and you've got to have it in bag loads. Very few do, and he said he didn't, and I wonder half the front bench at the moment certainly don't. Jenny is in Telford. What have you got for us, Jenny? Afternoon.
Afternoon. I entirely agree with your previous caller. Mm-hmm. If the Chancellor of the Exchequer is crying in the House of Commons, there has to be a reason. Yeah. She's giving her reason as a personal issue. Well, I'm sorry. She is Chancellor of the Exchequer. She is the second most important person in government of the United Kingdom, for heaven's sake.
Sure.
And she is crying in Parliament because she has a personal problem. Yeah. My God, what state is this government in? I'm absolutely appalled. And I've just heard her smiley, smiley, smiley. Couldn't be more smiley, smiley, smiley. Yeah. Oh, dear.
So smiley. She had new eyes as well, Jenny. Somebody gave her new eyes in 24 hours. What kind of pampering is this?
Exactly. Maybe she had. Maybe she'd been purchased a new outfit as well.
Yeah, I'm hearing Katie Price has been on the phone going, "Where'd you get that from, Rach?" Because at the moment, I think people are going to be as interested in how she managed such a spectacular makeover in about 12 hours. Jenny, I've got to move for no other reason than Simon. The news is upon us. You've been great, thank you, Jenny in Telford. We'll have more where that came from. 0344 499 1000. Oscar Reddrop joins us after the news. He'll certainly have a take on this. A man who's advised a Prime Minister. All coming up after the news at 2.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. We are talking, of course, Rachel Reeves. Or really, Rachel is more of a catalyst for this one. Her emotional appearance at Prime Minister's Question Time actually had an effect on the market, shook the market, pound falling, borrowing costs rising. It's starting to stabilise now, but, you can understand. This gives you a taster of how crucial and important that job is. You start bawling your eyes out in public, the markets get the jitters. Criticism is mounting over her tenure. Keir Starmer says, nothing to see here, Gov. Everything's fine. I've got her back. She says, I was just having a bad day. Man, that's a bad, bad day when the second most powerful figure in the land goes all grizzly on you in public. Details to come and more response from you. And we're asking the question on the back of all that, is this the beginning of the end of Labour? Also this afternoon, devastating story. Councils offering landlords rent, deposits and refurbishments to house asylum seekers. The aim, of course, is to save on the £5.5 million daily bill of hotels. They will just spread all that money out to local authorities who will have to find homes for people. Landlords gain. British renters face tighter markets. The Home Office defends the scheme as cutting costs and say it's legally required. What, is this your best shot? And MPs have voted to ban Palestine Action as a terrorist group after that £7 million worth of damage to an RAF aircraft. Corbyn, Abbott, the usual suspects opposed, citing protest rights while the government pointed to weapons and vandalism. We'll have more on that throughout the course of the programme. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk to Oscar Reddrop very shortly. More comment coming in from you on what's going on with Labour. Keith says, I'll bet you the Labour will be celebrating tomorrow because they're as thick as mints and believe they're doing everything right. It'll be all that rubbish about school meals, free trade deals, building 1.5 million homes. We'll get all of that. It'll be exactly that. Lynn says, well, I've just seen the speech from Rachel Reeves on Sky and I couldn't help but chuckle. She's obviously been told to smile and look happy while delivering her speech. And it was so transparent and forced and excruciating to watch that I had to laugh. What a joke this lot are. We, the general public, can see straight through them, says Lynn. And that's kind of where we're at, right? I mean, that's literally where we're at the moment. We're looking at a sort of a bit of a joke of a cabinet. And she's just one character. I mean, this is a cabinet. You think Rachel Reeves is the oddest bit about the cabinet? I mean, Angela Rayner sits in the same cabinet. Again, not particularly bright. And that's not a swipe at her. I love the fact, oddly, I do. I love the fact we have somebody from a genuine working class background in a high position. I just don't think she cuts it. And she's quite good at PMQs, by the way. But in terms of having that overarching, all-seeing eye that you need in those kind of roles, absolutely bereft of it. Completely. This one comes in from Kaz in Bedford. I have to hand it to Keir Starmer's government for one creative talent, the ability to find such a myriad of ways to gaslight us. Wheeling Rachel from accounts out with loads of slap-on is yet again designed to make us pinch ourselves and say, must have imagined that. This is seriously messing with the finances of the country and we're in huge trouble. The gaslighting has to stop. It is interesting. I'm going to mention it again. I'd like to know who the makeup artist was that was able to transform somebody who yesterday looked like Stalin's grandmother into someone who looked as if they were about to walk the red carpet at a Paris fashion show. It's an extraordinary transformation. I mean, you can't do that with surgery in 12 hours. So fair play to the person with the brush, because they played a blinder. Linda says, the fact that Kemi pointed out that Rachel looked very unhappy should have told Starmer the fact that she was upset. I did think that, but then I thought, well, also, when you're in that position, it is usually, it's pretty standard fare for the opposition to go, look at your own members, they don't even look happy. If the Prime Minister then turns round, he's kind of doing what he's been asked to do by someone who's not as powerful as him. So they are a little bit stuck on that one in terms of the visuals. So I do believe that, a lot of people have said, couldn't Starmer, why didn't he turn around and help her or something like that? I genuinely don't, and Julia said the same thing. I don't actually think he clocked it. He wasn't really in a position to clock in that place when you were doing PMQs. You tend not to just do a direct turnaround and look at those sitting pretty much behind you. But it was still odd. There were other people on the front bench, however, that might have clocked it. That was a bit odd. And she didn't, by the way, she didn't even attempt to kind of hide it, really. She didn't have her head down or even sit with her hand over her face. There was none of that. I mean, this was public blubbering. Extraordinary. 0344 499 1000. Don't go away, Steve in Scunthorpe. On Rachel Reeves, let's get a voice note from Gary in Hertfordshire.
Hi, Ian. I've looked at the newspaper images and the online images of Rachel Reeves crying, and looking at her, I've never seen her look worse, ever. She's always so perfect, and something's wrong. Something is drastically wrong. Now, if it's a problem in her personal life that's made her turn up for work looking like that, then I have so much sympathy with her. If there's something wrong between her and the cabinet, then we've got problems.
We've got problems. Here's a man who might know a thing or two about these behind-the-scenes dramas. He is, of course, Oscar Redrop, former number 10 advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister. Oscar, afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Wow, listen, nobody wants to knock somebody when they're a bit down, and if we were just talking about sort of ordinary circumstances, I think we'd all go, yeah, absolutely, if someone's having a bad day and we get that, and a personal trauma or whatever it might be, full sympathy, we won't even ask. But it does appear there's a lot more going on here.
Yeah, it does. I think politics is uniquely brutal, and I think there'd been a real pressure build over many weeks and months. And I think, although they say it's nothing to do with work, at the professional stresses, I think when a personal issue combines with a professional issue, the best of us, it can get to us. It can get the better of us. We've all had days like that. I think no one could look at Rachel Reeves yesterday and not feel empathy. And crucially, whatever you think of her politics or her direction, she's genuinely someone who clearly cares. She's clearly someone who cares about her job, and actually I would say cares about the country. So all green ticks there. However, the other brutal reality is that it's the people around her, I think, who've let her down. I mean, what the hell was she doing out there? Well, why was she allowed to go out there in that emotional state? That's not right. She was let down by people around her because, yeah, we could have all had the rumour mill could have whirred a little bit. We all could have been a bit snipey, or why isn't the Chancellor there today? Is she running scared? All that kind of stuff. And that would have been, uncomfortable at best. But it would have prevented what happened yesterday, which has caused her a great deal of, wrongly or rightly, embarrassment. Mm-hmm. And then the other brutal point to add to this, and this is just the way of the world, this is just the way it is, that it doesn't look good. It's not acceptable, ultimately, for the Chancellor of UK PLC during a week like this to be in tears. I mean, that's just not acceptable. But oddly, I don't pin any blame on her on that. It's the people around her. Why was she there?
Yeah. There've clearly been some backroom rows somewhere. And I wonder whether, she'd... Let's just sort of invent the scenario, not to be mischievous, but to try and be understanding. Let's say she'd had a row with Keir Starmer, she'd had a row with Angela Rayner, the Speaker had told her off for asking questions that were too long or responding with too lengthy statements or responses. So all of that had happened. She gets in the chamber, it suddenly dawns on her where she is, and bang, it just all comes out. So it could just be that. Now, but even that is quite telling, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, and again, without speculating what the the proportion of what was professional stress and personal issues ongoing, without getting into that, the fact that maybe a small altercation or a small comment from the speaker can tip you over into that place means that yesterday was clearly not the day
100%.
that you should have ventured into that room and sat in front of the cameras like that. I'm genuinely really, I feel sorry for her, not necessarily because she was crying, not to sound callous, but I feel sorry for her having been in that environment, that she was let down by people. It is not caring to pat her on the back and go on out there, you'll be fine, you can smash it. As soon as she sat down, before tears started rolling, it was very clear she wasn't feeling great, to say the least. And she should not have been put in that position, and by default the country shouldn't have been put in that position. It was really difficult to watch. I have to say, it's really split me down the middle, this, because I'm no fan of the policies. I've been no fan of Rachel Reeves up until now for numerous reasons. But seeing her today, getting out there, putting her best foot forward in front of the cameras again, I found myself rooting for her a little bit. But again, then there's this other part of me that says, it's not acceptable, actually. It probably can't continue like this. You can't have a chancellor in tears. You just can't, Ian.
And I wonder, and this is something we will talk about more on tomorrow's programme, because it'll be the first anniversary of Starmer in office. Where do you rate that at the moment, Oscar? You know what it's like to advise a Prime Minister. You know what it's like to experience and see all those pressures around you. You understand the infuriating nature of the media writing stuff that simply does not exist. And, even when you think they're the friends of the government, there's still stuff you think, where'd they get that from? That never happened. I'm literally in the room. It didn't happen. And you've seen that a gazillion times. So even allowing for all of that, every government gets a bit of it. Giving the government a kicking the government of the day, a bit of a kicking or a bit of a lashing is, an absolute standard bit of fare in public life. We get all of that. But taking all of that into account, where do you think, or how do you think they've done a year down the line?
Well, look, I mean, in those kind of final 6 to 7 months of Boris, it was if you look at the week that Labour have had now, in many ways it was like that every week for 6 months. So the intensity of that was just incredible.
Yeah.
And actually the real test for Labour, because there've been countless faults, U-turns, errors. There's very little to get excited about, but I would say that this week, this welfare bill, and yesterday, and all the internal pain within that party, and bloodletting and media kind of actually finally reviewing this government at this point, I think this week has been the only real crisis week. If I was to be really fair and objective, it's the only week of real crisis for this government in this year. And so it'll be very interesting to see how they react.
Yeah.
Because we kept, that Boris government was in turmoil for months and months and months and months and months, and we kept the show on the road relatively, despite that, for a bit, until it was impossible. And I think the underbelly of this Labour government is really soft. And so I think in the weeks ahead it will be fascinating to see how they react to this week, because this has been something that has truly rocked them, truly rocked 100%. Them. Objectively, don't care what your politics is, this government doesn't feel in control at this moment in time. And I think as much as we like to pull out the faults of the government over this last year, and there have been plenty, this has been the first week where I think we'd all have to say, hang on, what's going on here? I mean, and people are already saying Starmer's not going to last till the next election.
Yeah.
I think that is a bit of wishful thinking. I think he's still in a relatively decent place. But back to my real point on this is, I have no faith they'll be able to get stronger and rebuild after this week of crisis. I think things are only going to get more difficult and worse.
Yeah.
They are certainly in power, in government, Sorry, he has a government, but there is very little power for Starmer at the moment.
Yeah, that does seem to encapsulate exactly where I think they are in government, but not in power. And this story as well, just a quick word on this, but I was quite surprised to hear this. There's 128,000 people who are in social housing who earn over £71,000 a year. So that puts them officially in the category of top earners. Obviously, you pay your social housing rents 55% of private market rates, 40% in London. So significant savings. Now, it's a curious one, because if you've always had your council house and, you know, when you were earning a smaller wage and then you do quite well and earn a better wage, are you legally obliged or morally obliged to give it up?
Well, it doesn't look... I mean, maybe morally... but I mean, look, what does this speak to, Ian? This is a broken system at this point. It's a broken housing system. I think wages stagnating. I think it speaks to that. I mean, the housing, and I talk about it a lot, and I think it's one of the biggest faults of the Conservative Party. It's one of the biggest faults of the Conservative Party. There is zero housing market success. We have built zero homes in this country, and that would actually, not to sound too left-wing, but that would extend to social housing as well.
Yeah.
It is completely broken, and a story like this, I mean, when you have top percentage earners, I mean, other countries would look at Great Britain and look at a story like that and think, what has gone wrong in this country?
Yeah, it does. 128,000 families in social housing earning over, well, pretty much £72,000, double, well double the average wage. Listen, Oscar, we have to stop there for time, but great to have you on as ever. Thank you, Oscar Redrop, former advisor to Number 10 when Boris Johnson was Prime Minister. Thank you to him. Keith in Shrewsbury says, I bet you Labour will be celebrating tomorrow because they are as thick as mints and believe they're doing everything right. It'll be all that rubbish about school meals, free trade deals and building 1.5 million houses. Have I had a deja vu, or did I already read that one out? I think I already read it. But happy to read it again, because it's a good one. Thank you, Keith, for that. Chris in Northumberland referenced the BBC. When the BBC say they won't broadcast high-risk events anymore, will they stop broadcasting what they consider high-risk and use this to censor right-of-centre voices? This isn't going to be a course correction for them. It's interesting. It's so funny when you watch or read bits and pieces on social media, although this view predates social media. But there was something about Laura Koonsberg, can't remember what it was now. What was the law? She was mentioned in a story for some reason, and then lots of people piled in, all the left-wingers piled in and said, she's essentially just a mouthpiece for the Conservative Party. And that's why the BBC is so right-wing, and they don't want to entertain left-wing voices. And then Chris just sent me that, which says the very opposite. And I read both of these and think, well, are they doing something right? Left wing, right wing? I've got no idea. They got a load of stick for having a reform councillor on Question Time the other day. I don't know what box that was meant to tick, because they could have got a Reform MP. They went for a councillor. And that bothers some people. They go, well, hang on, they've only got 5 MPs. How would they end up at all on the panel? Lines are open, 0344 499 1000. 20 past 2, this is Talk.
Oh, I feel sorry for her. I think if you've looked at her facial expressions at Prime Minister's questions now over several months, she looks in a state of despair and as if the job is overwhelming her. In a personal sense, I wish her well. I think she's a useless Chancellor, but one wouldn't want anybody to be that unhappy.
Well, I mean, although she's making a lot of other people unhappy with the planned tax rise, you could argue that maybe if she had done 10 years at the Bank of England as an economist and worked as an economist at HBOS rather than in the complaints department and only 5 years at the Bank of England, maybe she would be up to the job better.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is from Dave, who says, is there any update regarding the trial of the alleged Manchester airport attackers? Nobody seems to be reporting on it. I think it starts today. The rest of the week has been about jury selection, and that's a heck of a case to try and select the jury that is going to be appropriate for a case that had so much judgment, prejudgment, airplay, airtime, social media. It's all still there as well. So there is no, somebody yesterday going, why is nobody reporting on this? It's like, because it literally hasn't started. That's why nobody was reporting on it. I would also have to caveat, I don't imagine it's the kind of case in any other world, had there been a scrap at an airport or anywhere else, you probably wouldn't even hear about it. It might make it into the local newspaper, and certainly wouldn't be something that would be commented on a daily basis, like a kind of rolling court case. It's never going to get that kind of airtime, I don't think. Because if you take away everything, you know, it's sensational because people saw the video, made their own judgments, so therefore it becomes, to most of us, go, wow, this is huge. And it's become bigger than it would have done had we not seen it retweeted and replayed 77.5 million times. So I wouldn't expect there to be a kind of, you know, each day you're watching, like you're watching some kind of, I don't know, a Lucy Letby trial or something with daily twists and turns. But that, you know, should there be information that jumps out, it will be reported as much as anything else. It's certainly no one's avoiding reporting it if that's what some people are suggesting. So there you go, Dave. I think it officially starts today, possibly tomorrow, but certainly it was all about jury selection this week. Let's go to Steve in Scunthorpe. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
Good. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the walk-on music should be Tears of a Clown for Rachel Reeves.
For poor old Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, I would feel sorry for her, but even in that interview this morning, she said, oh, it was a personal matter. What she didn't say was, oh, it's a personal matter, I was upset at the time, but it's all okay now.
Yeah.
Because if it's not okay, why is she out and about again?
I mean, if you think about it, one of the biggest flagship parts, Steve, of this government was meant to be solving the welfare problem. And she'd set out, probably spent months working till about midnight with every economic advisor she could muster, working out how to save 5 billion quid. I mean, it wasn't a great saving in the grand scale, but it was 5 billion quid. And that vote has ended up saving nothing. So she's had to swallow all of that and got a kicking from colleagues and God knows who else. So I suppose, yeah, I guess she is under pressure, but then she's in a job where you're meant to be under pressure, right?
Yeah, but she said it was a personal matter.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that.
No, I'm saying that, again, it just shows, just lie to cover your back and say there's not a problem. She could have, you know, she could have said anything. Yes, but there was a thing, and, you know.
She does. I mean, if
people
you
see straight through it.
Correct. And if it was a personal matter, Steve, you wouldn't have gone into the House of Commons. You know, she's not obliged, by the way, to be there during Prime Minister's question time. Nobody would have noted if she wasn't there, because they'd have just assumed she's got an important meeting with some important financial person. And she's not always there. Loads of them are not always there for those very reasons. So the fact that she went in would suggest to me that, you know, the family dog didn't die yesterday, if that makes sense.
And then to be rolled out this morning, all smiles and makeup on, and
God, yeah,
you know, everything's okay. I mean, perhaps she's just been watching that tennis player who, when he's having a bad time, calls a medical.
Yeah.
Djokovic.
Has a little special pill for his tummy.
Yeah, it's a little special pill, they say, every time.
Well, I know. I was talking to somebody about that last night. But all obviously within the rules. So there we go. Listen, Steve, great call. Thank you very much indeed for that. Sean's in Northampton on the same point of boomerang rach. What do you think, Sean?
Hi. Yeah, great listening to the show. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, firstly, I have absolutely no sympathy for her whatsoever. I think basically her and Starmer together, she's foolishly pushed their way through. Took over power. They keep getting everything wrong. And I think really what it is now, it's a case of how the mighty fall. I think that they both love the power and their jobs, but they just do not have the capabilities.
Sure.
They don't have the empathy. They just don't have the skill to hold that much power. And I think that it's just got through to her now that all of a sudden, what can she do? The polite thing to do right now would be to resign and let somebody else have a go.
Yeah.
Don't ask me who.
Well, yeah, well, there's the other problem because, you know, I remember in opposition, Rachel Reeves said some quite interesting things, and years ago she made some statement about going, you know, harder on welfare than the Tories and all the rest of it. That was like 2011 or something. So. And that's before we knew about her iffy CV and all the rest of it. But nonetheless, she was talking about, you know, I thought, oh, she might be quite good, this woman. She's sort of the acceptable face of sort of left-wing thinking. And then, of course, she gets the big job and you slowly sort of realise that, you know, she's probably better than I would be at the job to give her, you know. But then I'm not trying to get the job and she's the one that's got the job. You should be the best in the land, shouldn't you?
Well, can I just say, right, they're going on about this £22 billion hole we've heard about 3 million times now. It's so boring listening to it. But, I mean, if you look at the reality of life as it is now, right, you got Starmer, he's running around the world. All of a sudden he's decided he's in charge of NATO. He's decided he's going to lead with his 5% and try and get all the other European countries that really don't give a monkey's what the rest of the world's doing.
Yep.
But he's decided he wants to be like the Churchill of the 20th century, 21st century. He's going wrong on that. He's promising so much money to Ukraine, so much money to Israel. No doubt we'll have about 4 million Palestinians living over here by about next Sunday.
Yep.
But the trouble we've got, the money they could save, they're not. They are him particularly, is trying to be a world statesman where they were voted in to mend the potholes, get the doctors sorted out and all stuff like that. And they're going about it totally wrong, and they've suddenly realised they can't just play in these top positions. You've either got the calibre, you've either got the brain and the skills to be in these top positions, or you've not. It's that simple. Look at the immigration. Donald Trump, he's put it down by 98% in 6 months.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry, they've completely gone astray on what they were voting to do.
Yeah, and they've had a baptism of fire. They've suddenly got into a job with none of them with any parliamentary experience. And I understand that that's the same for many who come in for the first time. But nonetheless, I don't think they had any idea what it takes to run a country. And it's a very specific kind of mind and thinker. And even, you know, the reason we've seen so many woeful prime ministers of late, to be honest, Sean, is because, you know, it's a hard job and very few can actually do it well, even if you disagree with them. You know, I didn't agree with Blair, but I could see he was a good operator. You know, he made it work.
Yeah, but Starmer's a blatant liar. He's a complete, he's a narcissist.
Yeah.
He looks at the TV camera, he lies down the camera. If tomorrow she walks away tomorrow from this position, he will come up with some gaslight tomorrow. It will clear him of it. He's a Teflon pan.
He will probably. No, I'll tell you what he'll do, Sean. He'll claim he's never heard of her.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
It'd be hilarious on the 6 o'clock. He goes, "Oh, sorry, I don't know who you're talking about. I've never met the woman."
The man's got to go. He's evil. He's not sharp. He's ill. He's got to go. He's dangerous to this country. Something's got to happen now.
Something's got to happen. I like it. Sean, thank you very much. I was trying to, every now and again, you know, you sort of lay there. Have you ever wondered, you know, if I was Prime Minister, what I'd be doing? And there I was at home yesterday, lounged on the sofa, listening to the best of Benson Boone, as I tend to do at about 6 o'clock. And suddenly it kind of hit me, and I thought, God, if I was doing that job, I reckon I would last about half an hour. Because the minute that they... you know, you go into that room and the minute they go, right, these are the codes for, you know, if you have to let a bomb off, the ultimate bomb, these are all the codes. You think, whoa, don't give me that. Don't give me that, because a couple of pints in, I tell someone. I will absolutely tell someone. If me and Finn were at the pub, I'd go, right, don't tell anyone. F27 98346 -5. Yeah, aim towards France. I'd be singing like a kid, or I'd just be terrified. And then, David Cameron always used to say, I thought this was brilliant. You know, they have their red boxes and they have to get up really early in the morning to get through the paperwork, to sign off all the things. You know, there's a green box, and the green box has all the tittle-tattle in it. The green box has all the stuff that is kind of important. So if there was a, I don't know, you know, a story out there, but the police aren't releasing the name of somebody in a particular case, everyone's going, who is it? Who is it? Who is it? You know, you know that name, you get to know that, and you might, stuff like that, all the kind of, the slightly more sort of tabloidy side of the job. But again, I'd just be ringing my, I'd be texting my mates going, guess what? You won't believe this. You wait 6 months' time, wait to see what happens to Stephen Mulhern. Oh, yeah. He's definitely coming back with Going for Gold. You'd know all this stuff. So I was considering, it is a hard job, is my point. I don't dispute that. You've got to be on it. But the amount of boxes you have to tick are so full. There's so many of them that very few can tick them all. And Starmer definitely does not tick them all. It doesn't even get 50%, frankly. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
0344 499 1000. Is where you'll find us. Let's move to this story, because there's all sorts of relevances around this at the moment. And breaking, by the way, in the last few minutes, 4 people have been remanded in custody at Westminster Magistrates Court following that incident at RAF Brize Norton, claimed by the group Palestine Action, in which 2 aircraft were damaged. So we now know that sort of on the back of that, MPs voted 385 to 26 to ban Palestine Action as a terrorist group, following that £7 million worth of damage to RAF aircraft and the arrest. Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott opposed the ban, citing concerns over a right to protest and also their views on UK arms to Israel. The government emphasised Palestine Action's use of weapons and vandalism alongside bans on other extremist groups. Let's speak to with independent reviewer of terrorism terrorism legislation. Jonathan Hall-Casey. Jonathan, good afternoon to you. Is this a complicated case? Is it nuanced? Is it, as far as you're concerned, from a legal perspective, is it all cut and dry? Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, it's a bit nuanced because it's the first time, as far as I'm aware, and I think I know about this. It's the first time that a group's been banned because of the limb of terrorism, serious damage to property. Right? Most groups are banned because they're threatening to kill people. So it's the first time that that's happened, and I think it was worth a debate. I think the line I take is, you've got to be consistent about these things. So it can't depend upon whether you agree or disagree with what Palestine Action trying to do. You look at the methods, you realise it is very serious damage. And where I came out at was that it's acceptable. They're highly organised, and the police will benefit, I think, from some strong additional powers, which they wouldn't have otherwise, like to deal with fundraising. So that's where I come out, but it's worth a debate. I was pleased to see it debated on the floor of the House of Commons.
And I guess, I mean, I suppose the clincher, if that's the way to look at it, of this was that the damage, allegedly, and all the rest of it, I don't think there's any denials, to be honest. I'm not breaching anything by saying that, but was on a military base. That's, I mean, had it been at the Imperial War Museum or something to make a similar point, perhaps we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, maybe it's what tipped over the edge. I mean, if you look at what the government said, they said it was actually a series of events. And I mean, look, it sounds a bit crazy, but quite a lot of people commit terrorism offences. The old animal rights people used to smash up labs. Yeah. And with terrorism, like, there's the law, which is, does it qualify? And the answer is yes. And then there's the discretion. Like, is it worth making a big issue out of it, making them terrorists? Now, the view's obviously been taken after quite a number of incidents, some of them very serious, actually. It's best to have those extra powers in the toolkit. But you could have a situation in which they just did one thing and the government would go, look, we've caught them. They're not going to do it again. They're not training or anything like that. Let's just deal with them under the normal criminal law. That's the sort of balance.
It's an interesting balance, but of course what's now happened, we understand there's a new direct action group started, and they've called themselves Yvette Cooper. Now, one can only extrapolate from this that the idea is that they want to get banned so that they can be mentioned. Yvette Cooper, for those who don't know, is the Home Secretary, of course, so that they can conjure up this headline that Yvette Cooper has been banned.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, the whole point of terrorism or protest, actually, is to communicate. And if you can communicate by winding people up and getting a few laughs, then you will. Look, there are some very serious terror groups. Al-Muhajirun was an intensely serious Islamist terrorist group. It was connected to so many killings. They changed their name at the drop of a hat. I mean, there were all sorts of ways in which they do it. This is to be expected.
Yes, I mean, there's no way around, but I suppose it does make a mockery of it. It just reminded me of when they, when the news had to dub any member of the IRA, or Sinn Féin, I should say, obviously a big difference, Sinn Féin, and they dubbed voices, which was just so ridiculous. And this came on, as you will remember, Jonathan, under Mrs. Thatcher. And it sort of made a mockery of things, and I would assume that if a new direct action group are calling themselves Yvette Cooper, they're sort of hoping for a kind of similar response to things.
Yeah, I mean, let's see how things pan out. There's often an argument, it's not entirely related, but with new extreme right-wing groups, there are some very minor ones around, like Sonnenkrieg Division, Feuerkrieg Division, and people sometimes say, listen, if you ban these things, you'll actually give them the oxygen of publicity, to use the Mrs. Thatcher comment, and they'll become a bit glamorized. Actually, what happened in practice with those groups, they melted away. They all thought that they'd been infiltrated by the feds as they saw it. So let's see how things pan out. Obviously, the police, they're aware of the risk of the sort of I am Spartacus, right? The idea that everyone's going to go and say, arrest me now. They obviously realise there's that risk. But they've obviously decided it's best to have those powers and use them wisely.
Indeed. We will watch with interest. Meantime, great to have you on, Jonathan. Thank you for your time, sir. Jonathan Hall-Casey. Do you remember that back in the day? It probably predates, but there was a lot of people breaking into animal testing laboratories in order to stop animals being exploited. And that was a big thing. I knew someone who stole a beagle from an animal testing centre, which he thought he was... I mean, it cost him a fortune. This dog smoked 40 a day, for God's sake. Boom, boom. But nonetheless, it was a big thing. People were getting in there and taking the animals out. There was footage of the animal people with, you know, crates of rabbits wearing eyeliner and stuff. All sorts of scenes, and that kind of disappeared. Now, was that a terrorist organisation? Because they were trying to rescue the bunnies and the dogs. And, of course, animal experimentation does still go on. We don't tend to hear much about that. Would you describe that as an act of terrorism? I think some people would. They would say, yeah, actually, the reason we are actually making a life-saving pill here that we think could save children's lives who've got some horrendous disease. And unfortunately, one of the ways that we do that as a triple check is that we test this very same pharmaceutical on monkeys or dogs or cats or you name the animal, every single one of them would be in there at some point. So maybe it's that. I think a lot of places stopped using makeup, didn't they, for animal testing. Let's go to Andrew in Dorset. Back on the big issue of the day. Andrew, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hello to you, Ian. Thank you for inviting me on.
Pleasure.
I want to talk a little bit about my own personal experience of having to put your game face on, and you know the show must go on when you're in the political world.
Sure.
And it was in 2021 when I was chairman of my parish council. I'm the elected cabinet member, or was at the time, on Dorset Council. And at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday evening, my doorbell rang. There were 2 police officers there to inform me that my eldest brother had collapsed and died. Huge shock. He had a massive heart attack. Wow. 12 hours later, I had given a commitment to my community that I would be involved in the Remembrance Day service and would be leading with a reading in that service, and therefore my sense of duty was to turn up and support my community.
Sure.
You can imagine that absolute roller coaster of emotions you are operating in that time. Sleepless night, all the rest of it. So if that is the sort of scenario we are talking about here with the Chancellor, every sympathy, every sympathy.
100%.
And of course, nobody would criticise her for that. And I speak as a Conservative, so... You know.
But would that work?
However,
I was just going to say, Andrew, I could feel a however coming, because clearly she probably wasn't in that scenario.
Clear that what we are dealing here with is the pressure of her performance or lack of performance in that role, and the criticism that is mounting against her for the successive failings in office, and some of the interesting variations we've heard on her CV over that time, then frankly, the Prime Minister has little option but to say enough is enough. I will replace you. Because actually, frankly, it's cruel to see an individual who clearly is out of their depth being subjected to that sort of pressure week after week after week.
Yeah.
There is nothing to be gained for, at least all for her, but most of course for the country.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's where we need to be. So we need a very clear understanding. If it is a genuinely personal matter, every sympathy in the world. If it's political, this nonsense has to stop. And what I would say is whether, and it happens in local government, I'm pretty sure the same thing would happen in Parliament. If there is genuinely a member who has a very significant personal matter suddenly arising, there are mechanisms that operate through the Whip's office and elsewhere that would alert everybody, and nobody would then challenge them about it. We'd be very understanding. They wouldn't need to appear in the chamber. And that's the critical thing here. Why was the Chancellor subjected, if they clearly were in this heightened emotional state for a personal matter, subjected to being put in the public spotlight like that?
Yeah.
That's the bit that's unacceptable.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Listen, great call. Andrew, I'm sorry to hear about that news that you just told us about at the beginning there. What a shocking time. But to go on in a fashion of dignity in that way, you know, caps doffed all round on that. Can't have been easy. Andrew in Dorset, thank you to him. Back with your calls in a couple of moments. We've got the Voice of Doom. We're on day 14 for the Voice of Doom. Is it going to come? It's got to go today. It's the mystery voice with a political... If you've not heard it, we'll play you that voice in just a couple of moments right here on Talk.
Fine, look, Speaker argues with Minister, it's not exactly new. They're saying, look, she had some personal upset already, and it's, it's sort of straw that broke the camel's back. But you can't, call me old-fashioned, whatever is going on. It's a bit like Keir Starmer saying,
Stiff upper lip.
Like Keir Starmer saying last week, I was distracted by my global trotting and summit hopping.
You can't do two things at once.
Yeah, so I was distracted by the fact that, so I missed the fact that my party were upset about it. But look, come on, mate,
You're the Prime Minister.
You're the Prime Minister, you've got to be able to juggle some balls.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Matthew, I thought Matthew had written, Ian, get rid of the show. He didn't say that at all. We were just talking about the weird psychology of getting words wrong. He actually has a great show, as always. I think he's talking about all of us, not just this one. Thank you, Matthew. He says, if I were Keir Starmer, I'd get rid of Reeves and put Rayner in the Chancellor's job. It'll solve two things at once. Stop Angela in her tracks to become Prime Minister, and she'll obviously fail at the job as Chancellor and end up on the backbenches in the long run. Yeah, that would be extraordinary, wouldn't it, if she did that? Although Rayner's in an elected position as Deputy Leader. I don't know what you do with that in terms of how you work with the party and the Labour rules of... So he can't fire Angela Rayner, which is why Corbyn couldn't fire... Keir Starmer Deputy Leader at the time? Whatever it was. You end up in that strange position where your deputy is elected by others, so you can't directly fire them even though you're the Prime Minister. I love the suggestion, though, Matthew. Thank you for that. Let's go to KK in Felton. How are you doing?
How's it going, Ian?
Very good, thank you. That's the pleasure. Fire away.
Essentially, onto your main issues of the day as to essentially whether I knew that the wheels will come off Keir Starmer's political career, not because of his performance as Prime Minister thus far, not even because of his performance as Leader of the Opposition, but simply from an interview he had as a barrister, junior barrister, all the way back in 1994 with ITN, where he basically said that lawyers and judges should be stripped of their wigs and gowns and courts should look more like GP surgeries. That basically told me everything I need to know about the man.
That's a really good point. So someone who kind of loathed convention and tradition and all of that wanted to see...
Yes.
Whose mind wasn't progressive intellectually, it was progressive in the world of his own politics, as it were.
That was quite revealing of his character, because there's no sense of romance, attachment to this country, nothing, which is why he finds it so easy to hand over sovereign British territory, the British Indian Ocean
it's such a... Do you know what? This is such a great example. Yeah, it's such a... It doesn't sound on the face of it like the biggest metaphor, if you like, or biggest analogy of where he is now to where he was then. But actually, you're bang on. I think that tells us loads, doesn't it? That he was one of those people who wanted to see the kind of rug pulled under Britishness.
Yes. I mean, he's a Prime Minister, the leader of a sovereign state, handing over its territory and paying for the privilege.
100%.
Paying for it. Not only that, not only that, one thing that tells you everything is that because he has no sense of affection for this country, no sense of romance, doesn't think that politics is a calling, he sees the job of being Prime Minister simply as another rung on the career ladder. I mean, the man has no real integrity, which is why Keir Starmer, the well-known Republican, accepted a knighthood from the king.
Of course, yeah. Absolutely right. And I spoke to a lawyer a couple of years ago who knew Starmer at the time on the circuit, and he said, this is before Starmer was Prime Minister, but he was heading in that direction. He said when he was a junior lawyer, he was always going to be the Director of Public Prosecutions. That was the direction of travel. It was written right across his face. Nothing was going to stand in his way. He was going to get that gig, and I absolutely believe he had the same kind of mentality towards being Prime Minister. Nothing wrong with ambition, of course. Unbridled ambition, loads of people have it. But that is really telling. KK, thank you very much indeed for that. Before we go to Robert in Hertfordshire, we've got the voice of doom, of course. This is the day 14 of the mystery voice. Very simple question. All you got to do is identify whose voice is this.
I can't guarantee that.
It's not Michael Howard. You are looking for a former Member of Parliament, OK, who had a cabinet position. There's a further clue. I won't tell you any more than that. Here's the voice again.
I can't guarantee that.
87222, if you fancy having a crack at that. There's no prize, by the way, so don't be thinking you're going to get a bag load of dosh or sweets sent your way. If we get a right answer, we'll tell you on the other side of the news. Here's the voice again.
I can't guarantee that.
Who's that? 87222. Robert's in Hertfordshire. What have you got for us, Rob? Good afternoon.
Yeah, regarding Rachel Reeves, guess what? I don't care. I don't care.
Right.
Well, I don't care. That's karma. There was a lot of family members crying in the winter when their mums and dads died as a result of the cuts.
Yeah.
You know, I don't. That comes with the job. So let's move on. What we need to do is dissolve this government very, very quickly. And it's not as far away as you think. Me and you had a little bet a few weeks ago, and over a bottle of beer, and I thought that my bet was safe. I was going to phone up the other day and just have a little gloat. But you know what? The big picture is...
This was Starmer being gone before Christmas.
No, we said the end of the summer.
The end of the summer?
Yeah, I said the end of the summer. So I was really... You know, and
so you owe me a beer?
No, not yet. It's not the end of the summer yet.
Well, I'll make the judgment on when the summer ends, frankly, Robert.
But what do you know? You're sitting in an office with your sleeves rolled up.
Yeah, correct, yeah. The summer ends now.
I'm looking out of my conservatory window. Anyway, no. on a more serious note.
Yeah.
You know, the most depressing thing about this is, and I've joint reform, Farage is not the answer. And I'll tell you for why. Until we come out of the ECHR, nobody will be able to do anything. Nobody will be able to do anything at all. We need to, you know, people accuse us of being right-wing if we speak against it. You know what? Let's start being right-wing. Let's start, stop all asylum seekers, stop all the students coming over here. No more asylum seekers. If you come over here illegally, that is your right to claim asylum. Gone.
What about all the people that are still here? We're now talking about emptying the hotels and getting private landlords to accommodate those that would have been sitting in the Four Seasons.
Yeah, no, what you want to do, these hotels are already ruined. Nobody will ever want to go and stand in. So what you do is, where the reception is, you put in a security desk. You put everybody on a card and give them a curfew. Yeah. They've got to be in by 8 o'clock. That means these people can't do nighttime deliveries. If they're caught out, then you put them on a tag, ankle tag. You see, you've got to make it less lucrative.
Well, you've absolutely got to make... coming to the UK, even France said that, for God's sake. I mean, they were right about one thing. You've got to remove the pull factor, and there's no doubt about it. There's an almighty pull factor to come to the UK. It doesn't matter whether you're a decent person that says, I don't want to live in Iran or Eritrea anymore, so I'm going to come to the UK. You'd only pick the UK over any other country because there's a big pull factor. I know the language is one thing, but you don't get a lot of money, but you get, once you've got through those first few hurdles, you're on the road to something more successful than where you came from. I get it. Listen, Robert, got to move. Thank you very much indeed for that. Gary says it would be a hell of a coincidence if Rachel Reeves had an unconnected, terrible personal crisis on the very day after her boss pulled the rug over her £5 billion cost-cutting benefit bill and left her with a massive headache of plugging the gap in the public finances. Bang on, that would be some kind of coincidence, wouldn't it? Wow, who would have thought it? First she loses the bill, and then her budgie dies. Doubt it. Here's the voice of doom.
I can't guarantee that.
87222, if you think you know who that is, we will hopefully tell you on the other side of the news at 2, which is next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back. Yeah, lots to get through. We are, of course, talking about Rachel Reeves, that emotional appearance at Prime Minister's Question Time yesterday. What was behind it? It shook the markets, by the way. The pound fell, borrowing costs rose on the back of... That's how important that gig is. Has our Prime Minister got faith in his Chancellor? He says yes. Has the Chancellor got the ability to carry on? Many of you say no. More comment from you on the way. But the wider question, I suppose, is this the beginning of the end for Labour? Also this afternoon, the BBC saying it will no longer broadcast performances deemed high risk live after controversial band, you call them rap duo, punk band, whatever you want to call them, Bob Vylan, their appearance at Glastonbury. So, yeah, I kind of get that and I understand that. And also we're looking at dodgy fire sticks as well. Dodgy fire sticks. You know, when everyone thinks, I've got the answer. It's a multi-channel TV. Have you really? Have you really? Details on that and overheating tech in the hot weather. The last thing you need when the sun shines. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Now, before the news, we played you the voice of doom, of course. This has gone on for 14 days. We're looking for the correct answer. Very simple question. Can you identify whose voice is this?
I can't guarantee that.
Any ideas? These are some of the guesses. Peter Mandelson, Cecil Parkinson, no. David Cameron, it is not. Lord Kenneth Baker, not bad, no. Lord Carrington, Norman Lamont, John Knott, Nigel Lawson, no. David Mellor, it is not. Kwasi Kwarteng, it is not. Ken Clarke, it is not. We haven't got a winner. It rolls over to tomorrow for day 15 on The Voice of Doom. Now, let's get a word on what is happening in terms of the... In fact, let me just... in terms of what's happening in the world of migration, this is another absolute beauty. Councils are offering landlords 6 months' rent, deposits, refurbishments to houses, and all that goes with it in order to house asylum seekers. This will save apparently 5.5 million quid daily compared to hotels. While landlords benefit from guaranteed payments and no management duties, British renters are being priced out of what is already a strained market. The Home Office defends the scheme, citing legal obligations and cost-cutting measures. Let's get a word on this from migration expert, former MEP and director of Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, and a lawyer himself, Stephen Wolfe. Good afternoon to you, Stephen.
Good afternoon, Ian.
I mean, this seems utterly bonkers to me. I mean, there's the amount of flaws and problems coming down the tracks with this. I don't think you need to be a lawyer or an MP or work in the Home Office to see.
Well, let me begin by saying that I believe this is one of the most nasty policies that can ever be imposed to impact the young people of our country, those people who are struggling to find accommodation at the lower end of the income markets and the rental markets, because this is effectively paying immigrants to remove those people from homes and houses across the country. It's benefits for immigrants and ensuring that those people struggle. And the very practicalities of why that happens is very clear for everyone to see. A landlord is now being incentivized to remove somebody who is already living in that home, to take the offer either from a council or one of the big companies like Serco or Mere Homes or Clear Homes, to actually put an immigrant family that's just passed its asylum or is making a claim for asylum. This is not what we were meant to do in this country. We were meant to be looking after people who are poor, who are born here, and those who are paying their taxes and trying to get on in life, not those who are simply avoiding the opportunities that they may or may not have in their own countries just to try and improve their lives here at the cost of people who live here.
Yeah, and I mean, so much to look into on this. I mean, the idea that it's going to be cheaper than the hotels, well, obviously you've still got to pay for the same amount of people in a different kind of accommodation. And if it was cheaper, I would suggest not by much.
Well, I don't believe it will be much, but this is where the sleight of hand comes in, and I find it also a dishonest policy because at the moment, what does the government hate seeing? It hates seeing people coming across some boats, and it hates seeing people being put in hotels. Why? Because they're visible, and you can actually calculate the amount of money being spent through the taxpayer, through the Home Office costs. Yeah. The sleight of hand, the dishonesty here is that they will put them into homes in councils, having given them grants of indefinite right to remain. So now it's the council taxpayer who has to pay it. Yeah. And it's much harder for organizations like ours to find out exactly how much is being spent because they don't have the data on foreign people having that accommodation under council tax. It's dishonest, it's sleight of hand, and the people of this country will not put up for it any longer. And they know what's happening.
And we've got tens of that.
You can do this.
Tens of thousands of people that you've got to find alternative accommodation for. So, as you rightly say, Stephen, it's cooking the books when people like you or people like us go to the government and say, how many people are you putting up in homes paid for by the taxpayer? They will say, we don't hold the data on that. So we won't be able to read out these heady numbers, both the amount of people and the cost of that.
Absolutely, and it's totally unfair. Not only is it dishonest, the only element that you can see that came out of the statement from the Home Office was that that was honest, was that the fact that they're forced to do this because of our membership of the European Court of Human Rights and that we're a signatory to the UN Refugee Convention. And this will, again, put pressure on those people who deny that this has a major impact on their own citizens and give those like myself who've claimed for many, many years that we should leave the Refugee Convention until it's amended to remove economic migrants, leave the European Court of Human Rights, which prevents those people who are genuinely been restricted from having the opportunity to stay here from being deported, and actually enables ourselves to be able to control our own economy much more effectively when it deals with those who are genuine asylum seekers. That's the only honest thing they said, but it does make it very clear to the public now there is only one way: leave the ECHR and the UN Refugee Convention or amend it, or stay in, and this continues as it is ad infinitum.
And I also thought the numbers that they've used on this, Stephen, was completely disingenuous, if not outright lies. They say that asylum seekers, housing asylum seekers privately cost £14 per night compared to £145 in hotels, which will save taxpayers £5.5 million a day. Now, I don't know where they're expecting to put somebody for 14 quid a night. That's just over £400 a month. And there are very few places in the UK these days where you can rent anywhere for 400 quid a month.
No, and that's absolutely another element of the dishonesty about it. I have not seen these figures. They've not published them so that they can be reviewed by people like myself who are constantly looking at these numbers. But one thing I do know that will make it very clear to us is recently I had a landlord who has 10 apartments that he rents out at £1,500 a month, and he was offered by a major company to take all 10 of those apartments for 5 years, and they will give him the lump sum of that money up front today.
Wow.
And he will have to cover no costs. He is considering that sum of money because it's over £1 million that he will get today. He still owns the properties. He'll get capital gains. Yeah. But the one thing he said to me, Stephen, was, I will no longer be subject to all the Labour Party's new rules on being a landlord.
I mean, there's the
most... So I will avoid all of that.
There's the most extraordinary twist in this as well. Just almost in a story of so many, to coin the phrase, twisty-turny things. The final one is the fact that the very policy that Labour have introduced to the detriment of anyone running a respectable and decent landlord portfolio will be thrown out the window in cases such as this. I mean, you couldn't make this up.
No, you can't make us. And what it shows is there is a dogma behind the civil service in both the Home Office and the Treasury that feeds into this argument that we can't provide a deterrence factor to stop these people. So let's try and ensure that they are brought into society. We give them the housing, but let's hide the costs, hide the impact from the people of this country so they don't get upset by it. And what they're getting upset by? upset by the fact that we're not willing to solve the problem at the source.
Yeah.
And that's really where it comes down to. Fairness is out of the window. Dishonesty is part and parcel of everyday language now in government.
It certainly looks that way. Stephen, thank you very much for your time. Always good to have you on. Stephen Wolf, migration expert. He's a lawyer as well, former MEP too, on what is the most bonkers system you ever did hear. So when the government say, we're listening, we're going to solve the backlog, we're going to solve the asylum crisis, we're going to solve the fact we've got tens of thousands of people stuffed into the Four Seasons and Holiday Inns and God knows. No, we're just going to move those people somewhere else. I mean, it's not even Svengali-like. I mean, this is very blatant. It's not under the light of a silvery moon. This is broad daylight. What are you going to do? How are you going to solve it? Right, here's what we're going to do. See all the people, got 2,000 people in that hotel. We're going to move those people somewhere else. Ooh, that's clever. Right. But just like in loads of different houses all over the place, and it will cost, you know, a lot of money as well. Might be slightly cheaper, but it doesn't solve the fundamental problem of illegal immigration, and it certainly doesn't remove the bill so substantially that you would go, that works. In fact, when I say so substantially, if at all. Fern in Glasgow says, Ian, once those immigrants get given homes, there are bills. Who's paying the council tax and energy bills and buildings and contents insurance, TV licence? This is more that will be paid for by us and will cost more than hotels. They are just comparing room rates of hotels versus rent of a house. Yeah, they're probably going, right, rent for a house if it's multiple occupancy and there's 4 in a house. So it'd be 420 quid, 16. I mean, that might, in some place, I doubt it. It's going to be huge, and there's all the other implications as well, and then the social implications on top of that too. Chris is in Epsom. Back to that issue of Rachel Reeves. Chris, how you doing?
Hey, I'm all right, Ian. Yourself?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, far away.
All right. But just briefly, before we go on to Rachel Reeves.
Yeah.
The BBC, my best mate's father was the head of outside broadcasting.
Okay.
At the BBC for many, many years.
Yep.
And I can tell you, they've got a dump. They always, when they go in live, they've got a dump button and a tape lined up to drop in. The same as you have.
Well, they've got a tape lined up. They don't usually have a dump button at the BBC. In fact, most people.
It stops transmission and switches to.
Yeah, you could stop the transmission. You couldn't remove a bit of it and skip something.
But
I mean, the technology is there to do it, but for some reason, BBC, even to this day, BBC Radio doesn't use a dump button. I don't know why.
Well, amazing. Anyway, listen, Rachel Reeves. I mean, she lied on the TV. She elevated to a position that she's not capable of doing. But I did feel, it did pull on the heartstrings. As a man, seeing a woman cry, I always want to jump to their defence. But then I sat back and I thought about it, and I've been listening since 6 o'clock this morning with Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working on the computer at the moment, so I decided to have a little bit of a deep dive. Now, they're saying that welfare bill, instead of saving us $5 billion, is going to cost us $100 million now because of
they've ended up giving more than they were originally going to take away.
But that's nothing. Ian, this is how serious it is, right? Oh. The markets went tippy, yeah?
Yep.
The interest rate difference, just by 0.02%, means that our interest payments on the debt that we already have that we can't pay has gone up by £4 billion, right? So that's £4 billion, and that's not even the worst of it. Because of the currency shift against the dollar and the euro, all right, our purchasing power has dropped by £14 billion. That blubbering by the second most important person in the country by office has cost us yesterday £18 billion.
Did it not rectify itself? Because I hear what you're saying. It's often said that over the course of any day, Chris, the market does that.
You're right. It did.
For lots of different reasons.
It went further, and then it resettled back. But that's where it's landed at the moment. That was this morning's figures that I did at 6:30 this morning with AI and pulling all the figures up from the markets, from the gilt market, and then the currency, and putting it all together. And I was astounded because I didn't even think it was going to be that much. But yeah, £18 billion.
That's a few quid's worth, isn't it? Right there. Listen, Chris, I've got to shift because we have more to get into. Thank you, Chris in Epsom, crunching the numbers. It doesn't look good. It's not racist to believe in English identity. Why are we discussing that headline? Find out in just a couple of moments. David Shipley regularly helps us out with these kind of stories. Former prisoner and social commentator. He's written a great piece on this. We'll talk to him next here on Talk.
Various Tory prime ministers lose their authority, but no one apart from Liz Truss, no one did it in as record time as Starmer. He's only 1 year. It's his 1 year anniversary on Friday, and he's got. There's no way he would have jettisoned all of those cuts if he genuinely thought he wasn't going to lose the vote last night. No one's lost a second reading in the House of Commons since Maggie in 1986 or something about Sunday trading laws. I mean, this is a fairly unprecedented, a complete thumbing of the nose by his MPs.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is 3:20 on Talk. And now this story. The English have a proud and ancient history, tracing their roots back through generations as a distinct people and nation. But in an age of identity politics, this uncontroversial truth has come under a bit of fire. It's something we discuss from time to time, but joining us to defend Englishness, not that it should be or need defending, and its enduring significance, David Shipley, author of this article and regular commentator on social issues as well. I mean, you've written a piece today on this. I mean, just tell us how this came around and why it is, David, that you feel particularly strongly about this.
So earlier this week, an interview aired between Michael Gove, editor of The Spectator, and Matt Goodwin, a professor who looks at migration issues. And one of the things Matt Goodwin talked about was this idea that the English are a people, that we are a specific ethnos, a group of people who've lived in these lands for a long time and have common characteristics, and that therefore that forms part of our identity. And he drew a distinction between Britishness, which is a sort of, as Goodwin would describe, a broad civic nationality which lots of people can enter into, and Englishness, which he would say is more based in ethnicity. And I thought this was relatively uncontroversial, you know, that the English are a people just as the Irish are, or the Igbo are, or the Han Chinese are. But it produced a huge amount of negative reaction from very sensible commentators, you know, and some less sensible. And I just thought it was very strange that people seemed so angry and threatened by the idea that the English exist.
And there's always been, you know, we've talked about this so many times in different ways. You know, you can wait. You know, we celebrate St Patrick's Day in England, but you'd never see St George's Day celebrated in Ireland, and people are even hesitant about celebrating St George's Day in England. There's always been that sort of, you know, reservation. But the English have to be, you know, a little careful for some reason. You know, it comes to football as well. If you're seen wearing a St George's flag, there is that group of people who point the finger and go, hello, the EDL are in town. No, we're football supporters, mate.
Yeah.
There's a bit of that going on.
And it is strange, isn't it? And I think it has to come from a place of believing the English are exceptional. If you think that the English alone of all the peoples of the earth are not allowed to say, we exist, and you think that's particularly scary, then you must think there's something special about being English. You must think that in excluding other people from being English, we're doing something wrong. And I'm not saying that a Frenchman or an Irishman or a Scotsman is less because he's not English. I'm just recognising there's a difference. It doesn't have to exclude anyone, of course, in an unkind way, just to recognise that there are different groups of people.
Why? I mean, is it all kind of linked with, you know, previous sort of global domination, the empire? Is it that you know, once upon a time we were, you know, ruling the waves and all the rest of it? I'm not saying whether that was good or bad, but that was just the sort of historic reality of where we once were, and therefore, you know, that era well and truly over as it is. That the legacy of that perhaps has been, you know, who does that lot think who do they think they are? Is there something in that? Is it connected to that?
I think there might be, and I think it's interesting as well. It does seem to be a generational divide. Most of the commentators who are very negative about this idea seem to be slightly older. You know, they may be boomers or older Gen Xers, and I do wonder if part of this is a kind of inherited shame for empire, whereas those of us who are a little bit younger, and I'm obviously not a young man, may be ready to move beyond that and recognise that in 2025 we can have an identity as an English people and not feel ashamed of existing.
I was telling the story in the office a little earlier because we were talking, because tomorrow is Independence Day, obviously for our American friends, and Americans are very, very, very proud to be, you know, even a left-wing Democrat is probably more to the right than the average sort of centre-right person in this country. So they're very proud. Rick Stein, the chef, did a documentary where he was cooking in France with some French chefs, and he said, I've cooked over here for 30 years. He said, and the one thing that always stands out whenever I come to France, he said, and he says, nothing to do with food. He said, the French love being French. And it was such a great line. And we don't seem to have that same sense. We almost seem to want to apologise for it when we do.
I think that's historically been true, but actually I believe that's changing now. I think the English are awakening again as what's called an ethnos, this term from the Bible, which describes a people with a land. And I think there's a renewed interest in folk traditions, in history, because one of the people I interviewed for the piece you were talking about is Bijan Arani, and he's written a book about Englishness. And he talked about this idea that since the 60s, the education system hasn't really wanted to pass on the idea of Englishness at all, or any kind of knowledge of it. And now we're having to rediscover that, because we like any people, want to know who we are and identify ourselves.
And is it about being able to kind of list bullet point style, this is what being English is? Or is it something that you can't define? Or is it something else? I mean, what is the deal?
Well, I think lots of things which are real have fuzzy edges, and lots of things that are real have exceptions, and that's normal. And, you know, there are, of course, people who we would think of as English who aren't, you know, the archetypal or stereotypical English person. But broadly, I would say the English are a people who establish themselves as a people in these islands almost 1,500 years ago.
Yeah.
You can go back a very long way, and we existed as a people. The terms like the English and England were being used over 1,000 years ago. So we've existed for a long time. There's a shared culture, a shared history, a shared faith for most of that time in Christianity. And that does make us a distinct group of individuals. And of course you can never define everyone exactly. You couldn't write a computer program for this all, but it's still real, and it still exists, and it shouldn't be controversial to say that we exist.
Is it, you mentioned Christianity there, is it this whole story wrapped in that as well? Our Christian roots, is that relevant to this identity of what is Englishness?
I think it is. I mean, the Venerable Bede, when he wrote his Ecclesiastical History of the English, it's the first time we see the word English really written down in a substantive way. He's talking about it in terms of the history of us as a Christian nation. And, of course, we're much less Christian now than we were 50 years ago, but for the vast majority of our time as a nation, we have been a Christian nation. So that is a huge part of our culture and identity.
And if somebody says to you, what does it mean to be English? I mean, if I put that out now, we could do the fun version of that, which is a cup of tea, anyone for tennis, seaside rock, fish and chips, full English, Sunday afternoon sitting on the side. You could do all of that stuff, but it's obviously that's just the kind of veneer of things. There's much more to it.
Yeah, and I think that can be a little bit stereotypical, can't it? And I today on social media, some people have been challenging me, saying, well, that they think they're more English than I am because they embrace politeness and tea drinking, and despite being ethnically from some other part of the world. And I think Englishness is, for me, about having deep, meaningful roots in this land. I think if you are a people who come from a land, that generations of your ancestors have lived here, that of course gives you a really meaningful and important connection.
And it really does. If you consider, it's not something you dwell on that much, but when you, every now and again, if you're watching one of those, who do you think you are kind of programs, I find myself sort of thinking, well, that was my nan and my nan's nan and my nan's nan, and you wouldn't have to go far back to realise that, you'd be suddenly in the year 1120 or something, and my relatives were literally there.
And I talked to
and if I saw a picture of one of those people, I think I would have an emotional response to that.
Of course you would. And I think if you found their grave, you would feel an emotional response, and that's very natural and normal. There's nothing wrong with that. And I spoke to Ancestry.com actually, and they said that that most people, they would say, in Britain, they would be able to trace an ancestor back to at least the 15th century through church records. So that does mean something. And I think we've been for a long time scared of saying, actually, we are a people who have a land and we have history here, but there's nothing wrong with any of that. It doesn't mean we have to be unkind to other people or think less of them. We just should recognise who we are.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. Listen, David, good to see you. What else are you up to, by the way? Because you often help us out with all sorts of things, social issues, prison-based issues. I only mentioned at the beginning that you did a bit of time yourself on the inside. That's relevant to a lot of what you write about and talk about, and you'll continue to do that, I'm sure. But there's other strings to your bow.
Yes, I'm working on a novel about spies and wannabe wizards in 1905 Vienna at the moment. That's my summer project. So
Wannabe wizards. I mean, straight away you've got me there.
It's a historically accurate novel, entirely based on real history as well. So
wannabe wizards sounds like quite fun. I mean, literally wannabe wizards.
Exactly.
Wow. Hats and everything.
They did wear funny costumes, but not that kind.
No kind of stars and moons on them or anything like that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, they might have done. We don't know. David, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you to David with us on the programme. Back to you in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We're glad to be joined again by Sean Keach, Head of Technology and Science at The Sun. Sean, there's never a dull... I always say this. There used to be a time when this kind of news sort of was only in geek pages. And as the world has moved on, we've all lived through the technology era, smartphones, the digital world, now AI. This whole area of geekdom is now front page stuff, right? I mean, this is the stuff that dominates our world.
Exactly, and it's very difficult to escape, and I think there's almost nothing you can do really in life that isn't touched by technology. And so when you have a situation like that, you're obviously going to get bad actors coming in and trying to take advantage of you. So it's a tale as old as time, really, but it's just, I think, more difficult for regular people to get to grips with because it's so pervasive now.
Yeah. And what I find interesting about the world we're currently living in, the terms and for the language we all speak would be unrecognisable even 20 years ago. You know, I often think about when people are talking about social media. Did you tweet that? No, I retweeted it, and then I posted it, and then I shared it, and then then I liked it, and then I didn't like. It's like, wow, you know, our forefathers just moments ago we go, what are they talking about, these people? Like the word fire stick, for example. A fire stick obviously was something you stuck a marshmallow on the end of when you were in Cubs. I mean, that's all you did with a fire stick. Now you plug it into the back of your TV and watch loads of television, but the fire sticks are in the news.
It's an absolute nightmare, and you know, I spend my whole working life thinking about this stuff, writing about this stuff, and even I struggle to keep up sometimes.
Yep.
Fire sticks are in the news, and particularly dodgy fire sticks. Now, you may know people who have them, many of your listeners will know people who have them, and they're extremely popular. And you know, it sounds like a dream come true. If you're a telly fan, you're going to get somewhere in the region of 30,000 to 80,000 channels. You get Premier League games. All of this costs somewhere in the region of 40 to 80 quid, which is not a bad deal when you think about, you know, if you're paying for Netflix, you're paying for Disney Plus, you're paying for Apple, you're paying for all these services, you've got your Spotify, you've got your rent, your bills. It's no wonder that people are turning to these dodgy fire sticks. It sounds like a great deal.
Like a one-off payment almost.
Yeah, you pay it and then usually you get it for about a year and then the service cuts off. And that happens because there's a special software loaded onto it called VPN, which basically is meant to protect you so that your internet provider can't see what you're doing. So you're watching all this dodgy stuff, you're paying for this service. And that's one of the problems, is that all of your internet traffic is passing through this VPN and you don't know who's watching. You don't know. You're plugging this device into your television. You don't know who's running it. You don't know who's watching. And it's connected to your Wi-Fi, it's connected to your TV, and you're basically letting crooks into your home. And in some cases, you're letting crooks physically into your home. We found people selling these on Facebook and they're offering to come to your house and install it. So they'll knock on your door, turn up and install it. And you know, the idea that you're just going to let strangers come to your home with one of these dodgy devices is just untenable. People are doing it because TV is now so expensive. They're like, well, you know, this is a cheaper option, but there's no way you should be doing it.
I mean, it must cost the industry a lot of money, who are losing out.
Oh, totally. But the problem is that it's a very difficult argument to make for the general public. Because you say to the general public, oh, you know, you need to worry about these content creators, worry about Hollywood. It's just not going to wash with them. They're not going to be stressing about whether, you know, Brad Pitt is getting his paycheck or not. So really the worry for the general public is, you know, you're going to get hacked. You're going to let cyber criminals into your home, sometimes real criminals. You don't know what's happening. These devices are connecting to your gadgets. And, you know, you've got to think, all of this stuff that happens in your home, everything that's connected to your Wi-Fi, all the banking transactions you do, you log into all of these accounts, it all goes through your Wi-Fi. And if you're letting strangers watch that stuff, it's very dangerous.
That is extraordinary. I have an aversion, actually, to pirated or illegal stuff. And it's not based on law. It's not based on, like, somebody getting nicked. It's not even based on getting hacked. It's just based on a kind of, I don't know, somewhere on the sort of neurodiverse spectrum. I sit in this particular place where it's got to be the real deal. Do you remember that era? We were talking about this the other day, when you'd meet somebody, I don't know, in a car park or a cafe or a pub who'd go, I've got the latest Spider-Man movie, and they'd give you a DVD and say it's a £5, and you think, oh, it only came out like half an hour ago, and you've got a copy of it. And Finn was saying he remembers, our producer, you know, he remembers that well, and he always had his hand in his pocket to purchase, you know, whatever was out there. I could never do it because I didn't want to. I wanted to own the real thing. And so the fact that I wasn't owning the real thing was an issue. Similarly with Fire Sticks, somebody I know really well had one of these things, and they had so much TV, but there was no kind of interface like nice Sky or Amazon interface. There was just this kind of, it looked like a load of code on his TV. So if he wanted to find, I don't know, the back catalogue of Scooby-Doo, he had to scroll through about 10 trillion TV shows to get there. I mean, it did work for a bit, but it was a bit messy.
Well, this is the thing, is that people are willing to put up with that rubbish system, because you're right, you know, if you've got a Sky TV or you've got an Apple TV, that's going to look brilliant and it's going to work really quickly, but people are willing to put up with this worst condition, and they're willing to put up with the cyber risks because it's so cheap, and it's very difficult for people making TV and making these TV devices to deal with it. And it's ultimately difficult for Amazon to deal with it, because Amazon has no control over what happens to its Fire Sticks. It's difficult for the police to find these people, because it's all masked and it's all linked to criminal organisations. So it's a very difficult problem to solve. And ultimately, it's probably only going to really be fixed, one, by educating the public, this is dangerous, and two, by, you know, TV companies stepping up their game, making their services and apps so good and cost effective that, you know, you don't need to pirate.
Indeed. And the people that sell them do go to jail, of course, because it's a very illegal thing to do, because you are costing, I think it's about 21 billion quid annually that it costs the industry for all this pirate stuff that's out there, or this kind of fake taking of or legally taking of programs. And there's been cases where people have gone to prison for this.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had multiple people jailed. People have made serious money. There was a guy jailed earlier this year. He'd pocketed £300,000 and he went on the run. He got picked up in Spain. So, you know, this is a serious business. Often it's linked to organised crime, and people are going to jail for selling these sticks. And you know, it's kind of funny when you see the pictures of these raids, because it's often just, you know, a man with a cupboard full of computer servers. So it's not,
it's not Tony Soprano sitting there, you know, you expect. It's just some fella in a cap going, all right, me dog, and it's in the cupboard. There's a fella with a load of hard drives in there. It's like, wow.
And then usually these things are being flogged on Facebook or websites, or, you know, a guy in the pub who's got a dodgy Fire Stick, one of your mates knows a mate, sort of thing.
I mean, there's a couple of stories that connect to this as well. There was a story of a fella getting jailed for illegal streaming, and this was really football related, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And football really is one of the main things that's driving this. You know, because paying for sport is so expensive now that people are really trying to find different ways of accessing sport for free. And it's somewhere in the region of millions of Brits have pirated sport illegally, which is, you know, an incredible shame. But you're right, people have been picked up for illegally streaming.
Yeah, there's one case, a fellow called Zach Smith, who caused £7 million worth of damages streaming Premier League football illegally for 5 years. He legged it to Thailand, I think. Is that right?
Yep.
And
it's
then,
incredible, isn't it?
And then got caught. But him and his co-conspirators went to jail for like 30 years.
It also almost sounds like a mafia plot, but you know, ultimately it's just so people can watch TV for free. It's wild how big the industry's come, and the police are saying that, you know, people are using this to fund other types of crime. So it's what they're really trying to push the message of is this isn't a victimless crime. These are bad actors, and maybe they're selling Fire Sticks, and that seems innocent, but that's not where it ends. You know, it goes so much further than
exactly. And if it's just someone's giving you a code or something for your computer, or an iffy website, and you can go and watch, you know, Liverpool, Chelsea, or whatever the match happens to be, then I would always be thinking, if I was dead set on watching a match because I was that passionate, I'd be thinking, is it going to click off any minute? Am I going to get, you know, am I watching the Spanish version of this? Am I watching the English version?
Are the police going to bust through the door?
Yeah, there'd be all of that. You know, it would sort of slightly dilute the enjoyment for me if I wasn't watching the real thing.
And now you're going to be worrying about, well, you plug this into your TV, that's connected to your internet, that's connected to all your other devices, and, you know, you've let criminals into your home just so you can watch a football game. And to me, it doesn't feel worth it, and it shouldn't to the listeners as well.
I still don't think they've worked out the full sort of TV interface thing anyway.
That's terrible.
I mean, it's not, you know, you consider what you've got going on, and in my little boy's TV, you plug in there's the Sky, which the whole family have, and then he's got an Amazon Fire Stick, and you can put that in there, and then of course the TV, the Samsung interface comes up, and they want you to sign into their thing, and you can't get rid of YouTube even if you want to. You can passcode it, but it's all a bit it's a bit foggy, isn't it?
I suppose the problem is that a lot of budget TVs also have very similar problems, because usually when you buy a budget TV, one of the ways they cut costs is by stuffing a really rubbish computer processor in it. And so if you get a a 200 to 300 pound TV, maybe the picture looks good, but the menu will almost certainly take ages to load. You'll press the remote, it'll feel like the signal's going through mud. Very, very poor. So if you're looking for cost savings, it might not feel like a massive experience difference compared to having a regular smart TV that's also on the cheaper end.
That's a good point. It should be said there are free TV apps that are legal.
Oh, absolutely. There's loads. Tubi is a brilliant one. Plex TV is also a really good one. You've got Amazon Freevee, you've got loads, and then of course you've got BBC iPlayer, ITV. So there are loads of apps out there where you can watch free TV, you don't have to pay. Usually the catch is that you have to sit through ads, but often you'll find the case now is that with Netflix and Amazon and Disney Plus, even if you're paying, they'll show you ads. So it's it's not wildly different. And I think over the years we're all used to watching watching TV and stuff.
Yeah, it's like, and obviously as you say, you can sometimes pay extra to get rid of the ads if you really want to. And I guess the only problem with free services is that you're not going to get your Netflix for free, are you? You're not going to get Disney for free.
No, absolutely not. And I think the problem is that Netflix is very expensive now. It's about 20 quid a month if you're getting the top tier. And actually, generally, what I'd recommend is the best way to get premium TV is to not pay for all of them at once. If you want to watch like Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon and Apple TV, just sign up to one for a month, watch all the stuff, cancel it, move on to the next one. Watch all the stuff, cancel it. Do that with 4 services, and you start again, and then you've got them all for 3 months a year, but you're only paying for one every single month. And that will save you hundreds a year.
That's true, but also remind yourself that Netflix is amazing and it's done an incredible thing and it's changed the face of how people watch TV, but only about 2% of stuff on it is worth watching.
Oh, we spent ages trying to find something to watch. It's a nightmare, honestly.
Do you know what's funny? These big, we come into work and often have that conversation. Oh, have you seen this new, there's a Rose and Fred West documentary, there's this happened, there's this and this. And so there's those moments where you normally go on a recommendation, don't you? And I've asked a couple of people in the office this. I asked Finn, our producer, he's 23, so by definition, he doesn't know a lot. But in terms of this particular title, do you know Making a Murderer?
Oh, yeah.
You remember Making a Murderer?
Yeah.
Two things got people into... Sam, do you remember Making a Murderer? 2 things got people into Netflix. It was either Making a Murderer or Stranger Things. One of those 2 was the reason you went, I'm going to sign up to this. My question is this. Bearing in mind on a streaming service, some things are timeless, some things become big, even if they were made a few years ago. How is Making a Murderer one of the finest, most gripping of murder documentaries, 2 seasons of it, how has that skipped an entire generation? Because if I ask anyone Finn's age, they'll go, I've never heard of it.
I think there's so much content on Netflix now, and you've got to think it's very algorithmically designed to be personalised to you. So if you're watching nothing like that, it's going to be showing you completely different things.
Yeah.
And so some people, it might not even show up in their feeds. For me, I started with Netflix with Breaking Bad a very, very, very long time ago when Netflix was about a $5 a month. It's not a $5 a month anymore unless you get the ads version.
True.
So, it's all customised and, you're seeing totally different things to everyone else.
We had a question from Leslie in Durham who says that she's watching talkTV on a Fire Stick right now. How can she tell if it's safe and legit?
If you bought it directly from Amazon,
Leslie, you're going to jail.
Or a proper retailer, if you've gone to John Lewis or Curry's, it's fine. If you bought it from someone in a pub, you bought it from a car boot sale and it seems to have loads of telly and you're not sure why it's all free, it's probably dodgy. And if it doesn't have the usual generic Amazon interface, so if you go on Google and you look up Amazon Fire TV, you'll be able to see the exact way it should look on your screen. And if you've got, like you say, if you've got sort of like a weird aspect ratio, you've got strange menus that load very slowly, it's a dark sign and you might be in trouble with the law.
You might have a moody stick, Leslie. Just a final point. The weather's been hot. It's cooled down a bit now, thankfully for most of us. I think it's going to get hotter again next week. Your mobile phone and other bits of gadgetry as well can overheat, right?
Oh, they do terribly in the heat, and it is. And people think it's a temporary thing. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had this, but I've had it certainly where I've been sitting out in the sun and my phone has stopped working temporarily because it's got too hot. It's
Doesn't
overheated.
your iPhone show a little thermometer?
It does, and that means that
it's overheated.
It's dangerously hot, and you definitely don't want to be seeing that. The problem and it's not just phones, it's anything with the lithium-ion battery, so that's rechargeable. Laptops, tablets, phones, they degrade in the heat, the battery, so they get worse. And you know that might not sound like a big issue, but it means that your battery life on your devices will get worse over time. And so it means you'll be constantly heading back to the mains to charge your device. No one wants that. It's such a pain. and there's no way to fix it. It's irreparable. It's just permanent damage to your phone. So you need to keep it cool. What I would recommend is that you go into your iPhone settings and you go to settings and then battery health, and you can see exactly how much your battery is degraded since you bought it new. So it'll say something like 83% or 64%, and that means it's holding 64% of the charge it did when it was new. Now, if you're seeing that, you've got a very damaged phone, and what I would recommend is not upgrading to buy a new phone. I would just say, get a new battery from Apple. It's usually 60 to 80 quid, and it's way cheaper than buying a new phone. You'll get like new battery life.
It's only the battery that's really the problem, isn't it?
And also, often when your battery is degraded, the phone will intentionally slow down its performance to protect the battery from getting more degraded. So if you get a new battery in your phone, not only do you get more battery life, but your phone works faster too. So it's basically like getting a brand new phone without having to spend the £1,000.
Let me ask you as head of science at The Sun, you will know this. I'm getting word on the street from the astrological bods out there that Mercury, as in the planet, is going to be visible in the night sky.
Oh yeah, this is your chart. If you want to see Mercury, tomorrow night is when you want to look. It's its greatest elongation, which is a technical term, but basically means it's quite far away from the sun.
Yeah.
Now usually Mercury is difficult to see because it's close to the sun, so that's the bright bit of the sky after it's set.
Yeah.
Tomorrow it's furthest away, so if you look just after sunset, you should be able to see a good view of Mercury. You want to be looking west. It's in the Crab constellation, so if you're struggling to work out where that is, there's a great app called the Night Sky. You point your camera at the sky and it'll show you exactly where to find
But the thing
Mercury.
is, if I see Mars, which you do every now and again, that's obviously red, and that's always a bit of a moment, is you go, well, that's actually Mars. You know, we don't really digest that enough, how amazing that is. Saturn, don't think I've seen Saturn.
Very hard to see. You need a small telescope to see, to see it, really.
But who is this Mercury character? I mean, what's the distinguishing features? It could be any old tart of a planet that's up there, couldn't it? A few points we go, that's Mercury. I go, wow, thank you very much. I didn't know that, Sean.
What you've got to think is this is a rare opportunity to see this planet. So, you won't really get another chance this good this year. And it's going to look really like one of the brightest stars in the sky. Right. I think that's the thing you want to be looking out for. It's certainly near the horizon because it's, planets don't produce their own light, but because they're reflecting so much light from the sun.
Yeah.
It's going to look amazing.
Mercury is out.
And it's free. It's something free to watch, and it's not illegal.
It's not illegal. You don't need an iffy fire stick to see it. Just open your eyes, look up, look for something bright. It's probably Mercury if it's not the moon.
Beautiful.
There we are. Sean, it's great to have you on with us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Sean Keach, who's Head of Technology and Science over there at The Sun. Thank you to him. Back to you next on Talk.
various Tory prime ministers lose their authority, but no one apart from Liz Truss, no one did it in as record time as Starmer. He's only 1 year. It's his 1 year anniversary on Friday, and he's got. There's no way he would have jettisoned all of those cuts if he genuinely thought he wasn't going to lose the vote last night. No one's lost a second reading in the House of Commons since Maggie in 1986 or something about Sunday trading laws. I mean, this is a fairly unprecedented, a complete thumbing of the nose by his MPs.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. We have a British veteran who's been knocked out of Wimbledon. That is Dan Evans. When I say knocked out, I mean, if you want to be knocked out, like in the most spectacular fashion. How old is Dan? I think he's about 35, isn't he, Dan Evans? About 35. And Djokovic is, 38 or 39? So these would have been, in any other world, they would have been kind of, you'd be playing almost on the exhibition circuit as kind of veterans who long retired. But I tell you what, if you saw Djokovic match on Monday night that went on to about 10:30, 11:45, even though he had a pretty rough time, he wasn't on his game. But there's those moments of sheer genius you just don't see anywhere else. I know he's going to win. And that's what happened to Dan Evans this afternoon at Wimbledon. 6-3, 6-2, 6-0. That is that's a Mullering, I think, in anybody's book. But sad to see a Brit walk the plank, but that is how it goes. There's plenty more left, don't worry, we can do it. Back to your calls. Stephen in Manchester. Stephen, how are you doing?
Good afternoon to you,
Good afternoon to you. What are your thoughts?
Well, who will speak for the English that only the English know?
Indeed.
I was for many years a local authority secondary supply teacher. And I distinctly remember, I'm retired now, but only a few years ago, I was in a Salford school and the gentleman had gone off sick, who I was covering for the next couple of weeks. And I went in and the class was already there.
Yeah.
And just looking round for something to do, I put up on the board, I said, put your notes down, what you think of this. Who are the English? Okay.
Great question.
So a hand went up.
Yep.
And a very nice lad, about 14, 15. Please, sir, told us, our regular teacher, that we don't exist, the English don't exist.
Wow.
I said, we have our lesson. And I taught them from the early dooms of King Alfred all the way through to the conquest in 1066 and Magna Carta, and who the English were, their origins and so on. And at the end of the day, that boy came to me in the corridor. Sir, he said, sir, I want to tell you, I'm glad we exist.
Wow, that's beautiful. And you were doing this as a supply teacher, right?
Yeah, I covered humanities supply, and I found throughout the piece across Greater Manchester and Lancashire schools that generally there was a detestation of traditional society and of the English, very abandoned by the institutions. So that was my tale, and when I heard you talking, I thought, well, I want to tell you that.
I love it, and thank goodness people like you were there, Stephen, to rectify the woeful teaching that some of our kids have to experience on this one. And thank you. Sharon says, listening to your conversation with David Shipley, the difference between patriotism of the French and the English lies in the fact that the French are taught their constitution as part of their school curriculum from a very young age. The French know their constitution inside out. They know their rights. The British, however, are not taught about their constitution at any level in school, in the school curriculum, so most are ignorant. This needs to change to instill a sense of patriotism and identity back into society. And I have to say,
why don't we use the 500 million quid we give the French for migration to spend on English kids finding out about what's English?
Well, listen, Len in North Wales says,
hello.
Your show keeps me saying, time now for King Charles to unilaterally dissolve Parliament.
It's not
without
going to
consent
happen.
From the useless Prime Minister. Be great for him to get. Well,
it's never going to happen. People
I know,
say
but
it
it's
every
a
day.
nice thought, isn't it?
I am raging
The King
today.
just went,
I was going to be. Listen, obviously that dreadful news about Diego Jota, the Liverpool footballer, which was horrific. And I think things like that when they happen, they tend to put into context. But this story, this Talk exclusive, landlords offer cash and refurbs to basically move migrants out of hotels.
Yes.
So we're going to say to a landlord, a private landlord, councils are going to say, here you are, there's 6 months' rent. We're going to completely gut the place, make it look fantastic so we can move migrants in out of the hotels so we can politically say they've gone. And guess what? Every young person who's trying to rent a property, every person who's struggling, who can't get on the property ladder, isn't going to be able to match that with 6 months' money up front. It's a disgrace.
Unbelievable.
It's an absolute disgrace.
And that's where we're at. I mean, somebody sat down in a room and said this was a good idea.
They've done it again. And that's just window dressing to move migrants out of hotels.
And it also,
the bigger question is, why don't you just stop them coming here?
I mean, who'd have thought it, right? I mean,
it's not rocket science, is it?
You're going to end up with the same amount of people and growing, but they won't be concentrated into X amount